the seagulls follow the troll, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you.
Nobody cares, mate.
Nobody cares, mate. Nobody fucking cares, mate, honestly.
And the guy's talking absolute nonsense. Never heard so much rubbish in my life.
Normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
I'm telling you, don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday night, so you know what that means. It's time to go time travelling, but we're not going back to one specific point in time like we normally do, to going over a season or an era or anything like that. No, we're going to be jumping all over the timeline tonight, all over the Celtic archives, because we will be focusing on a very specific type of Celtic player tonight. As I said on Monday night, where my seamless plug for my own show, where I did a trivia question about loan players, it was almost like I planned it. Yes, tonight is all about players we've brought in on loan, because as we know, much to the annoyance of some fans from time to time, Celtic are partial to a wee cheeky loan deal here and there. Some of them good, some of them bad. Some of them a bit in between. We'll try and cover the whole spectrum tonight. Yep. I haven't sent the boys any notes regarding tonight. Usually I would send them like a big sort of, this is what we're going to go over.
We're lost.
Yeah. We're going to treat it like the Scalpers episode we did a few weeks ago. It's a bit of an open forum. I've got a few players written down that I want to primarily focus on. But of course, the viewers, get your suggestions in tonight as well about players that you enjoyed. I've even put a poll at the top of the chat tonight, as I like to do, a wee bit of interaction. Put a few options there. Who's your favourite loanee? We've got Bellamy, we've got Keane, we've got Patrick Roberts and other. So if you voted for other, be sure to let us know. But yeah, we don't know where this magical mystery tour will take us tonight. Russell, you excited at that prospect, mate?
Oh, aye, definitely. There's loads to get through, and it turns out I can remember quite a lot of loan players. Ask Jonathan.
Well, yes, you did win it. And by the way, nice bus apparel tonight. Very relevant.
Yes, the bus. Thanks to Celtic for doing the advertising for me.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of jackets and apparel, look at this. Look at this jacket. This guy down here, time traveler extraordinaire, the wise man of the bus.
The Hellraiser himself, man. Honestly, I love it.
Hellraiser, Hells Angels, whatever you want to call him. Liam Greenlaw, Canada's favourite Tim. How you doing, my friend?
Doing really good, thanks. Great. Always look forward to this on a Friday. It takes me. Every time when I finish the show, that's when all my memories come back. It's just like nostalgia. I know we talk about the goals and who scored what and did what and all that, but See, after you start thinking, oh, I remember I was at that game with so-and-so, or, you know, oh, that was when my dad was still alive, and we remember I coming here, my dad and I talked about that game. That's what I like about Bustalgia on a Friday. And it's afternoon for me, but I treat it as a Friday night now.
Brilliant, mate. Love it. Love it.
Look forward to the day.
Now you're a staple of this show, Liam. So you're the wise man of the bus. You know, you've got a lot of knowledge. On off screen, we're talking about some wee facts and trivia about loans, so we'll definitely get onto that at some point tonight. But before we go any further, I will need to remind all of the viewers, as I am the designated driver tonight, about all that good stuff that helps the channel out. So, of course, if you've only just discovered the channel, by all means, hit that subscribe button. We'd appreciate it massively. Over 3,300 have done it so far, Russell. Yes, and my number's right there.
Oh, I don't know. 3,330 something. Aye.
So there you go. So you can be the next one. You can hit that subscribe button. Be sure to hit the bell and get the notifications when we go live. Obviously, get involved in the comment section tonight. Say we always thrive on bringing your comments up and interacting with you. So by all means, do it. Hit the like button if you're a long-time viewer, and of course, share the link of the Boise Bus on any social media platforms you wish. And of course, as you may have noticed, if you're watching TNF and PMP last night, you'll see up in the top corner. I'm going to point to both corners because I keep getting this wrong. So whatever corner it is on your screen, you will see the piesports.com logo, the new sponsor of the Boise Bus, because yes, we are now in association with them. Of course, they bring the match day experience to your home. They obviously supply catering for St. Mirren and Partick Thistle, as well as other events. High quality food. But here's the thing, guys. Go over to their website, piesports.com, get a wee order in, and tell them that the Boise Bus sent you by using the code BUS888. You will get a very nice 12.5% off your order. But Russell Boyce is actually armed with a pie right now, and he's going to give us taste test.
Do you know what I've got? I had a couple at lunch. I had a Scotch pie, staple, right? That's like a packet of really salty crisps. There's no point in trying their other flavours. Do you know what I mean? If they can't nail the bedrock of pie, right? So I had one of those and a steak and gravy on my lunch. I burst out laughing because I was like, "Fucking hell!" Like it's so good to know that anyone who is using the code will actually be happy. Do you know what I mean? I was like, that's the best thing, because it could obviously bite you in the arse if maybe it wasn't that. I just laughed. I was like, this is going to go down a storm. But tonight, I've never had one of these before. Ooh. It is a doner meat kebab.
Doner meat.
It's got the kebab sauce in that in it as well. Should I take a bite?
Go for it, mate.
Just fresh out the oven. Mate.
Give us a taste test, mate. You tell us.
Where's the wee fellow when you need him for tart and taste buds?
Your taste buds must be tingling.
After this show, oh my god, that's unbelievable. Oh,
Doner meat kebab. A few people mentioned it already in the chat.
That's the future. That is the future. That's better than having it in a kebab.
So yeah, get over there to piesports.com and say, tell them the Boise Bus sent you by using our code BUS1888. And here's a bit of fun as well for the chat tonight. A couple of times in the WhatsApp chat today, I was dropping a few pie-related puns in Celtic names. So if you can think of a Celtic name with pie in it, like Paisan Maida or Payal Berkovic or Ronnie Pyler, get involved tonight in the comments. Put your best pie-related puns in there.
I love that.
I'll bring up some of the best ones. Me and Steve will send us to each other earlier on as well.
That's really good.
Yeah, so throw them in there.
Look at that.
Looks very good, eh?
Oh!
Nice and very, very full. And what was one that Terry said? Alessandro Bernapie. There you go, there's another one as well. But yeah, so if you throw them in tonight, I'll bring those up on the screen. We'll see some of the funny ones you can come up with. And also, what else do I need to do? I'm doing the housekeeping here. Oh yes, trivia, guys, because that's a staple here on Bustalgia. Let's have a trivia question to get us started. While Russell's munching his pie there. And
I've got my pie, I've got my bovril. I better put myself on mute while you read out the questions, but I'm just munching away now, man.
Full match day experience going on here for Russell. Fantastic. Okay, tonight's trivia to get us going. There's 8 answers to this one, guys. I think it's quite an easy one. I think we'll probably end up mentioning everybody during the show. So see how much you're paying attention. Because, yeah, it's well known that Celtic seem to absolutely love a deal with Manchester City, whether it's a loan or a permanent transfer. So simply put, I want to know all the players this century that Celtic have brought in from Man City on loans or permanents. There are 8 of them overall. And do not be surprised if we mention every single one of them at some point tonight. Do not be surprised. We'll give all the answers away. But we'll come back.
I think we'll give the answers away. I'm quite confident we'll get that, Liam.
Yeah,
very
easy.
confident, in fact.
Very easy.
Peter
Very
Lawwell
confident.
loves that City group link. You know, he loves it. He'll get on it at the end of a transfer window. Any players we could take on loan?
Aye.
To be fair, though, a few of them have been absolute belters, and we'll say we will be getting them tonight. So, yeah, guys, let's get into it. Let's get into talk about some loan Celts then. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever they were. But I think the guy who's the main focus of the thumbnail tonight, I think we have to start with this guy, Robbie Keane. It's one of the most blockbuster transfers in, I would say, modern day Scottish football. Pie Ferry,
Right.
yes, Pie Ferry, right away. That's a good one. That's going to distract us, all right. But I've unleashed the beast on that one. That's my fault, but it's good. It's good, Pater. But yeah, obviously Robbie Keane, I say he was one of the blockbuster transfers in the crazy January transfer window under Tony Mowbray. You know, just a year before, we were told by Peter Lawwell, January, you know, it's a hard month to do business. Teams don't want to do business. Tony Mowbray was signing everybody. You know, it was a revolving door at Celtic that month. But obviously, on the final night of the transfer window, we got that unique moment where thousands of fans gathered outside at stupid o'clock in the morning. I was one of said thousands that was outside the stadium at stupid o'clock in the morning to greet Robbie Keane, because at that point in time we were trailing Rangers by a wee bit, and we thought, right, this is the guy. This is the one that's going to turn it around. The excitement was palpable. I could tell from being down there. I don't know if you remember this one, guys, but around about that time there was an advert on the TV. It was for an insurance advert, and it was with Paul Whitehouse was in it, and he was parodied Plymouth fans. And we all shout Green Army at the end of it. And there was a guy up on the Jock Stein statue outside that kept shouting Keen Army. And he got a laugh the first couple of times. But see, when you've been standing outside in the cold for hours and he's got to about the 7th or 8th time shouting at people like, you just shut up, man. We just want to see Robbie Keane now. But yeah, he kept us waiting. But yeah, he did turn up at about 12:30 in the morning. And yeah, I said the buzz in the place before, this is the guy that's going to win his league. And of course, it didn't quite go that way, because the very next night, it was a sign of things to come. I think we played Kilmarnock in the league game right after it, the night later. And yeah, that was it set the tone really for Robbie Keane's ill-fated time at Celtic, because we lost that night to Kelly. I'll come to you, Liam, first, seeing as Russell's still eating that delicious pie and
This
Bovril.
is utter genius.
Yeah,
I just want to say
telling
very
you,
quickly, that is genius. That is actually genius. Who would have thought? Sorry, Liam.
No.
But yeah, bro.
You're killing me being in Canada looking at that. I'd kill for something like that right now. I was looking at their website, black pudding and steak. Get them to Canada. Come on, split the meat.
Aye. International postage.
Scotland, bring me some pies. Robbie Keane, tell you what, see when it finally happened, it was one of these, oh Christ, finally. Because every transfer window, we were always looking to bring in Robbie Keane. He was always struggling, or something was going wrong at one other club or another. I mean, boy went through some amount of clubs. It was just eventually a point of time by the time he got to us anyway. I mean, he went to every other club on the planet. I thought he was good with us, but I thought right away he was offering no protection for the referees. Then he found it was a bit of a cluggers league up here as far as what, you know, I think he'd had rough treatment, no for nobodies, you know, and farmers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think he was used to that, and that sort of put him off. But I sort of fizzled at the end, didn't it? I mean, it started off great. The game against them, he got kicked out of the park. I don't know what he had to do to get a foul or given a yellow card that day. And then he just went to his next club and his next club and his next club. I remember watching television over here in North America, and there was a thing. It was either in a People magazine or something like that, and there was a picture of Keane. I think it was Beckham, you know, and somebody else. It was like Noel Gallagher or something like that, and it was like, oh, Beckham, Noel Gallagher, and an unknown fan at the LA Galaxy game, and the unknown fan was Robbie Keane, and he was playing for the LA Galaxy at the time.
Oh my God!
And it's just like, how did it go wrong,
That's
Robbie?
unbelievable.
You know?
Oh man, poor Robbie.
You knew he was a mercenary when he came to us, though, right? He was like, you just knew everything about it. It was good to have him because he was like Roy Keane. You always figured it was part of their history, part of their narrative that somehow they would end up playing for us. And too many times it's on their terms rather than their terms. You know, it used to be like a swan song, one last sort of kick it today for my boyhood heroes and all that. But you know, I gave up my body for Man United. There's nothing left to me, or Leeds United, or that. You know, we seem to. You know, I hope we don't go down that route anymore. You know, although I would take Belly back.
Exactly.
It was that kind of last desperate move, I think, that one. See, we just signed all sorts of players. It was a revolving door, and he wasn't the only loan player we brought in that window. But Russell, it did feel like every window around about there, it was always, Robbie Keane's coming to Celtic, Robbie Keane's finally joining, and it never ever materialised. But yeah, it finally happened that night, and I say it didn't quite work out. But not really Robbie Keane's fault, because at the end of the day, that team had a lot of problems. He did the best he could, I feel, with like the amount of goals he scored. Quite a sad indictment that he actually won the club's player of the year that year and only played for us for half a season. But yeah, I can remember quite a few decent games where he banged a few hat tricks against like Kelly and all that, but all in vain because yeah, we were just so far off it and it just didn't work under Mowbray. But how were you excited? Were you excited when Keno rocked up?
I was. I felt it was bittersweet though. I was kind of more in the camp that like this is the last throw of the dice that, you know, in an odds game that's way, way, way beyond us. We weren't winning that league. That was the difference. I mean, seeing him in the hoops was obviously a buzz. Do you know what I mean? But I genuinely, at that point, I think I like Tony Mowbray, right, as a person, but I suppose just like the way I think of things, I can be quite cynical, and I was very much like his racers run. What difference does signing Robbie Keane make? Do you know what I mean? And why is it the end of the window? Why wasn't it the start of the window? Just the usual shite I'd be saying probably next summer window and next January window. I've always kind of thought like that. And I thought it was bittersweet because I absolutely loved him as a player. And he did do very well. He did very well in a Celtic jersey. His goals to games ratio was outstanding. But it was too little too late. Do you know? And I thought there was a bit of virtue signalling going on there. You know, there's a lot of look how excited all the fans are outside the ground, like yourself and that. And there's almost a bit of that imagery that's really just masking over what the real problem is here. Do you know what I mean? And it's, you've got a manager in situ who's signed players that aren't as good as what we had before. And that's the honest truth.
Yeah, it was. It's the window where we also brought in good old Edson Braffide, who we've talked about before on the show. But again, it's like he's associated with being so terrible. But again, just so many problems in that Celtic side. You had Landry Nguemo was alone that season as well that he brought in at the start of the season. And of course, somebody who we've said there's a bit of an underrated player, Henri Camara, Russell. I remember scoring a really good goal at Dunfermline in the Cup with the Bumblebee kit on.
Yeah, oh yes, there's, you know, I was buzzing when we signed him.
Yes,
I know, I did. I like Camara. I thought he did very well as well in that period. I liked him as a player. In fact, the honest truth was I thought there was a chance, if there was a chance to make him permanent, I would have probably took it. And I think there was.
I think he was one of the better ones in that.
He did well.
grim time to be a Celtic fan.
He had a lovely technique, and he definitely knew where the goal was. His finishing was really good. I just thought he was someone who the weird thing again, I suppose I look at the Robbie Keane one, the Robbie Keane one in comparison to some of the other names we'll mention, right? Robbie Keane was never staying permanently.
Oh yeah,
and I suppose that sort of thing, that it's a big name like that. There was even the hope that there might be a chance. We all knew he wasn't staying permanently up for the get-go, and I found that a wee bit of a strange thing to get round in my head. But I thought Camara, look at him, man, he would do all right.
I would have thought so as well. He could have been like a decent player for us for a few years under Lennon, especially. But of course, there was that opportunity. The only real hurrah that team had at a trophy that season was the Scottish Cup, and of course we had that ill-fated semi-final against Ross County at Hampden. I remember Keane missing a few chances in that game. In fact, I think Samaras missed a clanger as well. But yeah, it just was not to be that day. And yeah, the team ended up trophyless. So sadly, Robbie Keane, it was great to see him in the hoops. Obviously, we paid a lot of money to his wages to bring him here. Dermot Desmond forked up quite the cash to bring him to Celtic. But all for nothing in the end. No trophies to show for it, sadly. But yeah, say some fond memories. But William's right earlier on talking about that game against Rangers. That's the one I think where Bugera winks at the bench, doesn't he? He gets caught on camera where he's just kicking players all over the place and getting away with it. And I think it's Robbie Keane. He does him pretty bad. And yeah, that's the one where he sort of like gives a wee wink to the camera, like, oh, I got away with that one there. Or It's like, oh, fucking, honestly, man, just riled me, that guy. He really did, Liam.
Well, they know how to tell you that.
Oh, he did. But in a similar vein to Robbie Keane, I think somebody that we need.
See, just one last thing can I say on Robbie Keane? I was at when Lenny took over. I was at the game. Who beat them? I think what was the score? Was it 1-0 Lee Naylor free kick?
Fortuny and Naylor scored, aye.
It was 2-1.
2-1.
2-1. That's it. But I was watching. They do say scouts. The reason they need to go to live matches is because you get a far better grasp of how a player's performing. Yeah. See Robbie Keane off the ball that night. I went, fucking hell, man. He is class. Yeah. And that was like a genuine thought at the time. Like, look at him, man. He was pulling them all over the place. I just thought, he was. You could tell he was of an ability that season we'd really been lacking. Do you know what I mean?
He was. It was. I think with Keane and all, I'm pretty sure he'd been at Liverpool at that point in his career, and that kind of thought he'd gone back to Tottenham. It was his second spell at Spurs. And right. After about a year and a half, he'd already sort of dropped in the pecking order, and that's how we were able to get him. But yeah, he does. He's had a lot of clubs, hasn't he? He's moved around a fair bit, more clubs than Jim Hamilton when you look at their CVs side by side, the amount of clubs they've played for. Like Robbie Keane's almost as many as Jim Hamilton. But speaking of Robbie Keane, I say, in that similar vein, the big blockbuster signing on the January deadline day, we've talked about this guy before. And in fact, Liam, you, of course, you'd missed this episode when we did the Martin and Neil years, the final Martin and Neil season. Craig Bellamy. So we talked about this thing. I described him on the show that night. The tagline I gave, because we dedicated a whole segment of that show to Craig Bellamy's impact. I said, the man that would be king, because after, of course, Henrik left, another loan that season was the ill-fated Henri Camara, who was brought in the summer as a sort of like a, was even late in the day. He was brought in sort of like middle of July. But yeah, that was like the first signing that we made that summer. A striker. You're thinking, is this what they think is going to be the Larsson replacement? Obviously, Henri Camara wasn't up to it. But again, it's like, see if this guy came in at the start of the season, or if we'd even kept him after that season and he played for us for a few years. See, he had the potential to be a guy that was going to be well over 100 goals for us easily a few years. So, Craig Bellamy, Liam, what's your memories of the wee man?
It was good every now and again. I want Celtic to be a wee bit punk rock. You want your team with a wee bit of grit, a wee bit of edge, swagger. Something will just excite you as a player, and also you're on and off the park, in the interviews and how he holds himself off the field. Craig Bellamy was that player. I mean, everybody had high expectations of him hopefully staying with us. But it was just at that point when Molly was getting out of control for us, and I don't think we could do it, And I would have loved him to stay. I think he had a great time when I was here, like all the ones that did come and finish their time. I remember him scoring that hat-trick. Was it a hat-trick or 4 goals he scored one night?
Hat-trick against Dundee United at Tannadice.
Hat-trick against Dundee United was a joke,
yeah.
Liam. It was an actual joke.
I went to an Irish bar my first night when I was in Vancouver, and somebody was playing that game was playing on a tape on the telly in an Irish bar. And I stood there and watched it. He goes, we just put in good games that we liked with tape, and we put them on every now and again, for like atmosphere. It was a Canadian guy. He had no idea what game it was or nothing, but it was like part of the atmosphere of an Irish pub in Vancouver. And that was the game that they had on tape. And I was like, all right, when I watched him score the goals again. I think he was a cracking player. I think the way he talks about us now is for a player that came on loan. That's what you want. You want people that had a brilliant experience with the people in the city, with the fans themselves, even enough that he can give banter back and forward to Rangers fans and all that, and they'll feel like he has to hide himself or go behind a different persona or no comment and all that. He's ballsy enough to just come out and have it and give as good as he gets in that. And I think he's one of my favourite. I say probably was my favourite loan signing. As far as expectations and delivering, I think he delivered everything he said he was going to do, except I don't think he promised to sign a contract. So,
no, I loved him, Phil. I just thought he brought that spiky attitude that Martin O'Neill team that final season had just maybe when you think about it, mellowed a wee bit as they all got collectively older, and I think he was, as Liam puts it in a brilliant way, punk rock. But I found the loan spell from Bellamy maybe just because I bought into that person. I like players like that are edgy. I do. I always have. You know, probably like that sort of person in general. And I found him more compelling as a Celtic player than I found Robbie Keane.
Yeah, I think.
But I did. I thought there was something that Robbie Keane was coming up and ticking a box in his own career, right? So, yeah. Without actually fully committing to it because he was never signing permanently. I think Craig Bellamy was ended up Celtic shat it and weren't willing to pay £6 million for him, which to me is a slap in the face. If we're not willing to spend £6 million on a replacement for Henrik Larsson, that I'm not saying he's on Henrik's level, but undeniably was of the highest level we'd seen since Henrik in that season, considering we'd been fed Henri Camara and Juninho and all that before. Bellamy came in like a rock star, acted like one, had that, I can handle the weight of this club on my shoulders. You know what I mean? I can handle being the main man here. In fact, I quite like it. And I think you need that attitude. I just think he probably has every right to go, well, I joined was it Blackburn he went to first? I think he went to Blackburn, then West Ham.
Played for Coventry at some point in his career.
No, that was way before.
I'm going to try and...
I am positive he joined Blackburn Rovers for £6 million.
Oh, after he left us, right? So you're talking...
After he's left us, it was Blackburn or West Ham, but I think it was Blackburn first, then West Ham. I could be wrong. It could be the other way around. But either way, I'm convinced he was a wee bit put out that we didn't go, like, show him what he's worth. If you want these great players, don't just think you can get them for free. Do you know what I mean? On loan and then haggle your way to that's like you've got to pay top dollar sometimes if you want it. And I think we did a taste for him.
Yeah.
And I do also believe that season you lose it because you only had him for 6 months. You didn't replace the King of Kings at all. You gave Martin O'Neill a loan signing then as well. Yep. You know, it's just fucking ridiculous. So you look at it and you go, the one thing that would have got you a wee bit out of there, out of that situation, would have been if he arrived permanently after the devastation of not winning that league. I think it would have been done. Alistair Jackson, he would have stayed if Martin stayed. But it doesn't matter. I don't think Celtic were willing to pay that £6 million fee. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah,
that's the kicker. And for me, I just think he was an opportunity the Celtic should have took up in the summer. I don't know what his availability was then, but a player of that ilk is what Celtic should have been focusing on. Henrik gave them a year's notice. Remember, a year's notice. I'm leaving, right? So it was no secret. So why were we signing a loan player from Championship side Wolves at that point? And he actually wore the number 7 jersey. No, he didn't.
27. Juninho was 7.
Juninho was 7. Get my free transfers and loans confused, because that's what you do to replace the best player of our lifetime. But I do think the Bellamy one, you look at and go, there's a chance to fix this a wee bit. Okay, we've came up short in the league, but we know what could have been now with what he's produced in that time. And the fans love him. There's a buy-in there. The shirt sales will go nuts. And you've got a new hero. I'm not saying a new king, but you've got a new hero, Phil. And we opted against that. We shat the bed yet again when it comes to spending something as what should have been basic like £6 million.
Should have been in a point that Russell brought up there just about going into that Celtic dressing room. You're talking about guys that were getting to the sort of end of their time. I think he would have reinvigorated. I think if he would have walked in there, he would have had quite a cocky attitude, but they would have liked it. I think Tomo and Sutton and that would have been like, I like this guy. I can imagine him coming in there and going, I'll show you how it's done, boys. And they would have probably been like, I like the cut of this guy's jib, but his sledging and stuff like that was quite infamous because there was a cup game we played, Liam, I believe, against Ayr. Or was it Clyde we played, and we beat them pretty heavily, and he's saying things like, Matt Gardner earns more money than you to some of the Clyde players, but that's the type of you say, William, punk rock.
Aye, that's what you were getting, right? I mean, I think he wasn't a good boy off the pitch as well. I mean, did he not have something when he was with Liverpool with John Arne Rees or something where he smacked him with a golf club for...
They made a mockery of it when he scored a goal in the new camp. He scored a winning goal in the new camp in the Champions League for Liverpool. Him and John Arne Rees done a parody of it. His goal celebration.
I mean, if that's no John London, I don't know what it is, That is a proper, that's how you do it.
Yeah,
I think
Bellamy and Balotelli up top.
Oh my God.
Was that? What'd you say?
I said Bellamy and Balotelli up top. That would have been brilliant. Rock and roll would have been back then, Liam.
Did they play together at Man City? I think they missed each other, didn't they? Because he was at City when Mark Hughes was manager, and then he went to Liverpool.
Mancini wouldn't look as cool as he does if he'd had Bellamy and Balotelli at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No way.
See if you had the potential bump pot 11. I mean, those two would definitely be on your squad. Arthur definitely the goalie. You know, if you look at just all the bump pots we've had as well, you could put out some. That's one we should do one night. Was the toughest team up. The toughest.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Hardest, toughest guys, right? But anyway, back tonight, Bellamy. Bellamy's crack, man. He punk rock. That's how you do it.
And I seen it get mentioned in the comments. So obviously, I've got up there with Joseph McGonigal's one about he arrived at Glasgow Airport for a friendly. He was at Man City. We're going to Ibrox for a friendly, and there was a fan wanted him to sign a Rangers stop, and he went, "Can't sign a Rangers stop." So there you go. He still has a wee thing for Celtic. And I think I mentioned it when we did the Euros 2016 one when I was out in France and I was mingling with Welsh fans, and apparently Bellamy was there about half an hour before I arrived at the pub in Bordeaux City Centre. Bellamy was there, and I'd imagine he would have probably because he's definitely still got an affinity for Celtic. You can tell that he thoroughly enjoyed his time here. So I think he would have been if we bumped into him, I think he would have made time to speak to us because we were all had our Celtic shirts on that night. But I remember the boys at the pub saying, "Oh, if you were here half an hour ago, Bellamy was here with us having a few drinks." I was like, "Oh, I just missed them."
How funny is it as well? Alan Woods talking about the fact he hated Shearer, and that does help.
There you go.
Because apparently, I think I said this in one of the Bustalgias before, Phil. So apologies for repeating myself.
It's all right.
But apparently, one of the you'll love this, Liam. One of the pre-season trips, or whatever, was in Ireland, right? And they've obviously had a night off or whatever. Because I'm sure they went to a local sort of boozer, Celtic team, Sutton and all that. Bellamy was part of it, so it must have been. Was it the end of the winter shutdown or something? Fuck knows, or maybe it was a testimonial or something. But anyway, they were all. He was showing them all text messages for Shearer. What do you want me to say to him? He was just bamming Shearer up in front of the Celtic players. But he goes, "Oh, I can push this boy's buttons. Watch this." Shearer's right back, but you better not show your face through here again. I swear to God, I'm going to take your head off. You know what that Celtic team was like? They would have loved that stuff. No, tell him he's a fan. Just keep it going. They would have, I loved that aspect, Alan Woods. So nice one for reminding me of that because I thought it was. I liked the fact he stood up to someone like Shearer as well. Yeah. Alan Shearer's this big legend. Shearer, I chucked it in Newcastle, remember, under Rutulet.
That's right, he did, yeah.
He chucked it. But, this guy who's, I'm the diehard guy, chucked it because Hula on form didn't want him to play. And then when Bellamy came in, he didn't like someone being the guy who thought he was the best player at the club, effectively.
I was Souness that was Newcastle manager by that point. I always thought it was Robson was still manager, but no, he'd left and they brought in Souness. And a personality like that, plus Shearer, plus Bellamy, all those personalities around each other, there's going to be
Well, Robson did manage the two of them as well.
He did. But Roy Robson's one of football's good guys. He was always one of. He was great.
But once you've got even Souness then probably getting their backups before training and that, you probably just go in pissed off. Shearer's cutting about 34, nowhere near as good as he still thinks he is. And Bellamy's like, "Fuck you. Who are you talking to?" Love that.
Well, anyone that's an enemy of Alan Shearer's definitely a friend of yours, Russell, because you've definitely not hidden your feelings about Mr. Shearer. But like to be fair, you're quite justified in it. Now, a section I want to cover rather than one particular player, I thought, well, when you look across the eras at Celtic and different managers, you could tell a lot by how much they're getting backed, by how many loan signings they get, and of course, an infamous time within the last decade where you could tell there was a massive downgrading going on for numerous reasons, was obviously when Ronnie Dyler came in, or as I said earlier on, Ronnie Pyler, to be topical with how we're going tonight with old Pie Sports stuff. But yeah, the Dyler years, there is a lot of loans all in a short space of time. Some, we reap the benefits on, but some of them are just absolutely terrible. We've got Joanne Berget came in. He was only here for half a season, if I remember correctly. Alexander Tonev, who, Liam, we've mentioned, we brought up this one on the season we did Ronnie's first season. You feel that, well, first of all, I agree with you. I think Tonev did get a raw deal with what happened in the O'Shea Logan thing, where he was basically found guilty on the basis of probability with no proof at all. But you with your corrections to Bulgaria are obviously like he had the potential to be something special for us, but he got totally derailed by that incident, didn't he?
He went to Aston Villa. I mean, we got for Aston Villa, so he went from Bulgaria to Aston Villa. A lot of high hopes in it as being like the next type of Petrov, Berbatov type player. He was a winger, right? But he was that level. Yeah, I thought it was his first or second game. I think it just took it. I mean, imagine going and being labelled racist all your life, and if you didn't do it, that's horrible. I'm not coming out and condoning it for anybody jumps on it, man. You know, but the way it was sort of set up, it was like, well, we have to believe Shay Given because, well, he's accused you and that, you know, and then we found out.
Shay Given?
Sorry, no Shay Given. Shay Logan. Was it Shay Logan?
Shay Logan, Aberdeen.
And then it was just like, and then every time you seen this guy popping up, he always had a grudge to deal with, and he was always showing up to be always of the best character. You know, if you look at any of the stuff that, you know, came out about in the papers and things like that, and, you know, like trying, like, for some reason, Celtic was in his head, you know, and so that always felt, it was like, okay, so in reflection, maybe there's a good chance that Tony didn't say that. You know, and nobody heard them. And I mean, it's a mute point. I feel like I'm arguing something that's already done and dusted there. But imagine it could have a psychological effect on somebody if you've been accused of something like that. And I think it just killed his confidence and he disappeared. Don't know where he went.
I wouldn't know where, because he only played a handful of games and he copped that ban. Then after it, for the rest of the season, he was just appeared here and there, and then just fizzled out. I feel he must have went back to Villa.
I think he was linked with Celtic before he went to Villa as well.
I think you're right. Something in my head's telling me he was, definitely.
I'm sure that he was one of those guys, Phil, you know, one of those players that could have been. I think he was meant to be, or well, not meant to be joining Celtic, but was heavily linked to Celtic. I think he chose Villa, and then it was a year later that he came up the road on loan.
It's not the first time that's happened. There's a player I'm going to mention later on who it falls into that category as well, that we did manage to get on loan maybe a year or so later. But here's a question for you, Russell. During that era, another player that came in on loan, Jason Denayer, or Denayer, depending how you want to pronounce it. Denayer and Van Dijk, the best centre-back pairing we've had in the last decade.
It's hard to argue with that. However, in Europe, they were. You know, that's got to be the yardstick, really. Yeah. Because in that period, obviously, there was a couple of times where we'd had far more impressive results in Europe. Do you know what I mean? With, you know, you look at the Barcelona win, for example, or the qualification for that group stage, and you had Kelvin Wilson at centre half with Effie Ambrose.
Yep. And
they bizarrely achieved more. Denayer was an interesting one because you could tell he was really good. I don't know if it was Van Dijk. I was so consumed with thinking it's just the best thing in the world that Denayer was like always just going to be like the sideshow. In that opinion, maybe you appreciate him a wee bit more as time goes on. The guy went on to be Lyon's captain, for God's sake, for about 5 years. So, you know, he's obviously a quality player. I think as well, there was a bit of tiresome of the Man City approach at that point as well. You know, a guy on loan for Man City, fucking hell. But no, he did very well for us. Were you ever convinced he was going to sign permanently? I think the answer to that would be pretty similar to the Robbie Keane one. I don't think that was actually ever going to happen. I think he was very much using Celtic as stepping stone FC.
Yeah, he's one of those players as well, and there's many of them that we'll mention tonight who had a great time when they were here, and they're that one that every time a transfer window rolls around, bring him home. Bring him home. You know, Denayer was always on that list. I'll get him back up the road. Bring him home. Recently, he became a free transfer, didn't he, after leaving Lyon? And again, lots of fans out there, bring him home. And it's like, Ange probably hasn't got much interest in him. And then Ange will pick who he wants. But a lot of fans are like, bring him home. And it's like, I thought he was great. I thought him and Van Dijk were together. But yeah, you're right about the European thing, because you've got to take into consideration the league at that point as well. Our best, you know, challengers were Aberdeen, who were finishing like 15 points behind us and stuff like that. But there was a few games that I do remember where Van Dijk...
Same applied to the Barcelona the season we qualified.
Well, yeah, I suppose they were still, we were able
Still
to beat
Aberdeen,
Barcelona that season, So it's Aberdeen, I do remember, though, there was games in Europe as well, and it was the group stage. That group stage, we had to close the top half of the stadium because just fans weren't that interested in Astra, Dynamo Zagreb, and was it Salzburg? I think it was the game against Zagreb. There was a few moments where Van Dijk was actually making a few more mistakes, and it was Denayer that had to sweep up for him. There was a couple of times where it rotated, where Denayer would make a mistake and Van Dijk would clean up for him, and then vice versa. But overall, I did think they were a great centre-back pair. And one thing that I liked as well about Denayer was he was a goal threat at the other end. Now we always talk about how Celtic are just like so bad when it comes to scoring off a set piece, scoring off corners. It's quite a rare thing to happen, and it's been a progressive thing over years. But during that season, I think he scores like 7 or 8 goals that season, and Van Dijk gets about 7 as well, all from like headers at set pieces.
Yeah, I think that was the last time we were a goal threat for the corner. I was just going to say that as well.
Yeah.
Well, my memory of Denayer was like telescopic legs. You know, he was always stretching and reaching for it. Always like his recovery speed over like 6 yards was really good. He would just stretch himself right out there and be able to snap that ball for players, and also as well, like a bit of punk, you got a wee bit of reggae as well. That's like there is a player with dreads in the Celts and the hoops, you know.
Yeah,
we've always had very good luck, I think, with most of them. And so it always just looks cool anyway, you know. And I thought, I wish we'd have him back. I think he would have fit into Ange's team. I think he's matured a lot in that, and I think he can do both defensive and play that game of bringing the ball. I'd love to have seen him come back. No.
I think in the last, since Pep Guardiola burst on the scene, every manager wants to play out for the back now. And I feel like in the last decade, the only 2 centre-backs we've had that were comfortable with the ball at their feet together are Van Dijk and Denayer. Because right now you've got CCV, who's very comfortable with the ball at his feet, and Starfelt, who is not. Then you said earlier on, like Kelvin Wilson and Ambrose together. Like Wilson was more of the one to pass the ball out, but Ambrose, no, don't let him pass the ball out with his feet at all. Don't let the ball go near him. But it feels like that one season with they two together they were just phenomenal. It was like they were just so comfortable coming forward. There was even, I remember, a goal that Van Dijk scores against St Johnstone that season where he picks the ball up in his own box and just cruises forward. Doesn't really pick up the pace that much. It just feels like he brushes past everybody and just slots it in the bottom corner. It's just like that easy for him. That easy. Just so comfortable with his feet, and he could hit a bloody good free kick and all. But him and Denayer were a great partnership. But yeah, it would have been good to get maybe one extra season out of him, because obviously the next season, Ronnie's second one, where the not just the loan signings, but just all signings in general all seem to go downhill. We brought in guys like Tyler Blackett on loan, the guy who got brought on as a sub and got subbed off because he was so bad against Mulder. Remember that one? But one player we did bring in the January window, Russell, we talked about his competition for his shirt last week, James Forrest. Good episode that we did. Very topical episode. Lots of good debate on it. But a guy who pushed James Forrest, and James Forrest pushed him as well for the first year and a half anyway. But of course, when Roberts came back for his, what would be second full season, he was injury prone. But that first 18 months of Patrick Roberts, you could tell he was a special player. And I described him last week. He was Jota before Jota, years before him. That skillful winger that gets Celtic fans out their seat. He gets on the ball and you're like, something's going to happen for this kid. You can just feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to describe it as well. I love that he was Jota before Jota was here. Very like that. Patrick Roberts was a player I thought that brightened up the end of that Dylan spell. I thought, fucking hell, he looks good. Then you get Brendan Rodgers in, he's staying there, and you think, fucking hell, he was going to do well there. And yeah, whilst James Forrest may have won the war, I think, for that position in the end, I think the initial battles that Patrick Roberts were winning, he was winning them spectacularly. You know, he was doing things with the ball that really excited you. Patrick Roberts has been discussed a bazillion times in a million podcasts, but the honest truth with him is it was more, in the end, his loss than it was Celtic's, I think, ultimately. I think when we reflect, we still went on and were extremely successful at what we were doing at the time, you know, in that era, with or without Patrick Roberts, where I think Patrick Roberts' career would have took a very different trajectory if he'd committed to signing for Celtic, you know, on a permanent basis. I don't know what advice he was getting at the time. I don't know if he was getting his head full. Very much in a weird way. I don't know if you agree with this, but it was very much like Gary Hooper getting his head filled. He was going to be called up by England, which was way, way, way further off than I think was, in reality than what was actually maybe getting whispered to him. And I wonder if Patrick Roberts was being told he was a lot closer to the Man City first team. Do you know what I mean? In that similar way. And I think has maybe fell in that trap. Well, I need to give it a go. Because so many folk are telling me that it actually could be on. Like Gary Hooper thinking, I'll move to Norwich, be the main man there. I'll be in the England squad. Patrick Roberts, I'm going to go back down to City. My stock's high. I'm going to get in that team. They've given me another. I think they renewed his deal, didn't they? When he was at Celtic on loan.
Yeah, they did. Yep.
They renewed it, and I think that aligned with a few wrong words in your ear. Do you know what I mean? Of faux encouragement. I think to that narrative, I've probably distracted him enough. I just think Chris is saying he went on their pre-season tour. Better memory than me. That's probably true. I mean, it means fuck all. Unfortunately, do you know what I mean? I think the actual reality was pre-season tour or not. Paul Slane went on pre-season tours for Celtic. Do you know what I mean? Cy Ferry did. Do you know what I mean? They've got about 5 games between them. It's not how it works, unfortunately. But maybe if you've got someone in your ear thinking, no, there's a chance you fall in that trap. But I think Patrick Roberts' career would have panned out very, very differently had he committed on the successful path he'd already went along for the last 2.5 years. I just think you sign that deal permanently. You keep earning your stripes. Your move to the EPL will come. We've got a track record of doing this. We're open to offers, as we all fucking know. By the way, so it's not like we're going to stand in your way. And you've in the next 2.5 years, that could be 5 years or something you've given us. You'll leave a fucking hero. Maybe not a legend, but you'll leave a hero. And I think instead he's always going to be a what if player.
Big time what if.
And for a lot of us looking at his career, Liam, he's going to be the guy that we just think, that's a shame. He was better than that.
You know, it also looks at, we might have dodged a bullet as well. He could have been one of the players that as soon as we signed him, he could be dirt bigger. And because he liked a signal. And I thought when he played with us in that, but I didn't see him peak as a player after he left us because I never seen him mature as a player or even as a man for that matter. You know what I mean? Like physically and that, like it all still looks like a wee guy, young boy that played with us. He's never turned into a big, beast of a guy. Because he's got to be about 27, 28. Like, look at the way.
Where is he now? Sunderland? Is he
Sunderland? And it's a full-time transfer. He spent the last few years hopping around on loan, but Sunderland, he's finally made a permanent move. If you look at
how's he doing? Does anyone know?
I'll have a look what Sunderland are, and I'll tell you, man.
Because I think that's not the worst fit, by the way, Liam, for him. I think a big stadium again, passionate fans, a club that's clearly you would expect with the right management. I know it's ironically Tony Mowbray, who we were just talking about being a disaster at Celtic, who's in charge there. But you would think inevitably the cycle of Sunderland will inevitably take them back to the upper reaches of the Championship and looking at the Premier League. I think he could be a big part in that.
Yeah,
I mean, as long as much ongoing.
As long as he can keep fit, I think that's the thing. And then if his mindset now can mature, evolve and playing like what he could have missed, he could still end up having a half-decent career. But Christ, as we've learned the last transfer window, 28's the new 50 now as far as transfers go. So who knows, if he'll get picked up.
Well, Sunderland were a bit of a basket case club, weren't they, with the Netflix documentary, Sunderland Till I Die? But it seems like they're heading in the right direction now. They're currently 10th in the Championship. They've got a game in hand on the 6th place team and 3 points behind, and that's obviously the playoff spots. So they're in the mix for the playoff spots, and they've been a sort of semi-regular Premier League team over the last 20 years or so. They've always been sort of yo-yoing between Premier League, but there's sometimes they've had a good run in the Premier League where they finished 7th and so on with Kevin Phillips and Niall Quinn up front. 3 goals of 24 this season so far.
I mean, he wasn't necessarily a prolific goal scorer. Is my memory served me right when he burst on the scene at Fulham? He was more of a forward.
I think so.
I think he scored goals. I think he scored goals for Fulham, and it was like he was going to be a forward. And then, I mean, I thought the way he played, he was born to be a winger. I think he just did all the tricks. He had his weight of pass was delightful. He was creative. He was imaginative on the ball as well.
Yep.
sometimes you get a good fit. And I think as well, it just shows you the near misses. I mean, as much as sometimes all the windows saying, "I'll bring him home" and all that can become a bit tedious. I think at times that Matt Sover though, actually how much you enjoyed him when he was there. Because I did really like him when he was there. And I think now the memory of him becomes a wee bit more distasteful for two factors, Liam, because I think we look at it as, like we just said there, the missed opportunity, the what if. And I think also because he's been linked that many times, folk have now become tired of seeing his name, and therefore their memory becomes tired of what he did in the jersey or how good was he really. Where I think actually at the time, at the present moment, he was a player for us. I was loving it, man.
I wish he'd stayed. I thought he was good, but I don't know. Yeah, he's just free-falled after he left us, And I don't know. Maybe it wasn't his decision. We keep thinking it was his decision, that if he could, that we offered him something to stay. We don't even know if we, as we say, asked the question on the bus. Did we ever ask the question if they wanted to come and try to sign him? I don't know.
Again, without knowing anything, it's all just speculation. But you've got to think it this way: after the 2.5 years he gave us on loan, he'd won 7 trophies, back-to-back trebles, and he won the league under Denayer. So he may have looked at it from that point and been like, "What really is the benefit of me staying in Scotland? I've won everything, 2 seasons on the bounce." Could have been something like that as well. But yeah, you're right. Something in my head reminds me that there was talk that he was maybe going to go back down to Man City and get into their team, which when you look at Man City's team over the last decade or so, it's like you're not getting in ahead of some of the players. Also, do you not think as well one thing that's missing from his CV though? A goal against Rangers. Do you remember that sitter he missed in the infamous semi-final when we lost the penalty shootout? And it's like, if I could add one thing to his Celtic career, because he was brilliant, I thoroughly enjoyed him, just get a goal against Rangers. That was all I wanted him to do. Get one against them, but wasn't he to be?
More than capable. I remember the game, one of his best games. And I say one because there was moments in time. I remember, in fact, one of the games at Ibrox, his weight of pass for the cutback that then Scott Sinclair scores at the far post.
Brilliant.
It's his wee reverse balls, just fucking beautiful. But remember the game at Tynecastle. I think we spoke about this in one of the Bustalgia before. And at the 5th goal, and he just is so nonchalant. He whips one into the top corner, but he's done it he's done it at walking pace. You know what I mean? He's just it was too easy at times. And even the celebration then, just the arms out, walking over at the fans. I just thought I liked him. I thought he was. I'm not going to say the punk rocker that Craig Bellamy was, but I do think he had a wee bit of arrogance about how he played as well, which I'm all for.
It's you play against those guys that play with socks down at their ankles. He's one of the guys. That's gallus. That's gallus, right? You exposing yourself, and I think he was the same. He'd roll his socks down when he played, and I always thought those guys had a wee bit more toughness to them than anybody else in the park. That's guys you want to mess with.
Aye, that's it. I remember him scoring another one at Tynecastle. I think on the day that did we win the league against Hearts when Sinclair scored the hat trick? We had a couple of seasons in a row we won the league at Tynecastle because the Dyler's season we won it there. And Griffiths, I think Roberts might have scored it. Griffiths definitely scored that day, but then there was the one at Tynecastle. We smashed them 5-1, and I think he was brilliant. I know Sinclair scored the hat trick, but I can remember just that team, just that Brendan Rodgers first season. Just some of the football that they were playing was just absolutely phenomenal. With the winger options, I'd say Forrest was at the top of his game. Sinclair was unbelievable that first season. I say Patrick Roberts. Aye. Yeah. And what Chris said earlier on the chat's actually correct. He did go on a pre-season because we chased him for that entire summer going into Brendan's second season. And when he finally got unveiled, it was like this drone footage that flew through the stadium right into the dressing room. And he turns around and it was a hashtag PR7. They'll try to make him like CR7. Because he changed the squad number for that season, but we finally got him late on in the window. Aye, PR7 was the tagline that they went for. Sadly, he wasn't as good as PR7 that year, but CR7, sorry.
Your memory is clearly better than mine because CMO 102 Legends has put me in my absolute place. He never scored for Fulham. There's me telling you he's a striker 2 minutes ago. Cheers for that.
Oh well.
Cheers for that, mate.
That's all right, mate. That's right. He obviously attracted Man City in some way or another because obviously they paid big money for him. Yeah. Aye, it did. I know other players say when it comes to like the loans during the Dial era, we've actually mentioned him a few times on the bus. Funny enough, Russell, you've not actually been on the bus both times this guy's came up because we talked about him last week because he was involved in the whole James Forrest story. And we've did Ronnie's first season. John Guidetti, because I said my lasting memory of him was he was great for the first couple of months, but obviously he downed tools, whatever. But I'll never, ever forget or forgive him for his sulk after the cup final when, while the players are doing the lap of honour with the trophy, he's in the middle of the park just kicking confetti around, annoyed he never got to take a penalty. James Forrest stole the penalty off him and missed it. But he was another one that, see if he had, stuck around with us and didn't throw the toys at the pram for whatever reason, he could have been a really prolific goal scorer for us for a good few years.
He was a player I was champion as to sign for a couple of years. He'd had a spell when he was 18, 19. It was at Feyenoord, I think, in the Eredivisie. Yeah, Eredivisie. Hello, if you're watching. Your good friend Arthur Newman is back. But yes, in the Eredivisie, he scored something like 22 goals in 22 games for Feyenoord. Oh, and he was like 19, and I was like, Celtic should fucking get him. And we were linked with him. Yeah. That's him before he went to Feyenoord. Then we linked with him again. I think it was a further year later. He got a really bad injury. And then it was like the next year, and I went, he'll bang those goals in. Like, he will bang them in. And I think if you remember, he started like he was going to be in that vein of form.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God, yeah.
He scored a lot of goals at the beginning.
That was his celebration, wasn't it? It was a mockery of the France under-21 player that mocked him. Can't see you now.
Is that what that was?
Yeah. Sweden won the under-21 Euros, and in the final they played France, and when France scored, one of the French players ran by him doing that, like Carrie C. So when Sweden ended up winning the game, he ran right past the guy and returned the favour in kind, and that was why it was a celebration.
What happened, though, was that was strange. Cheers, Ed, mate. Love you too, mate. Nice to be nice. But I mean, like when Guidetti first arrived, I thought if you can get him driven, you can get him in that mindset that he was clearly in Holland and into that sort of space. Yeah. You are looking at a player who really could rocket up here. And I do think as well, there was a bit of there's something about like Swedes and Celtic that I do think leads you to thinking, oh, once they come here, they love it. And I was convinced that, like, even if he's got an arrogant streak, I've just said earlier, I'm not against that anyway, full stop. His though seemed to be souring at being at Celtic after 5-6 months. Now, there's a few reasons for this. We need to remember, have full stadiums, you've mentioned, Phil. Lack of a nearest rival, you have to remember as well. You're playing at, it's great seeing you play at Celtic Park, there's 50,000 season ticket holders, but there's only 25,000 at the fucking game. And it's a league you're going to win. Yeah. Suddenly that appetite goes. But you only need to look at his moment of magic. He scores that third goal against Inter Milan, doesn't he?
He does, yes. He comes on and scores a late equaliser, yep.
Live then, and it was like, he just didn't, in his Celtic experience, I think he joined Celtic looking for that Celtic experience. Yeah. And I do think that there was a lot of moments you would normally get within your first 6 months that were maybe lacking. I think he found the games quite straightforward, quite easy, and he was scoring. And I think his motivation levels dipped without that constant sort of full crowd here because this matters. Suddenly realising if we drop 3 points, it doesn't matter. Maybe the team not going in a direction of travel that I think any player would say, looking back, wasn't exactly clear and concise either. And I think he'd lost his sort of motivation and his hunger for it. I mean, it's his gift to do that. I do see that, though, to an extent. Like, that wasn't the best example of Celtic. Do you know what I mean? Like, coming at that age, that he was involved in. Albeit, I still think once you're there, you need to man up a wee bit and go, you're a professional footballer here. This could still change your life if you do well. And don't think too much of yourself. I think he was definitely guilty of that as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'd say the cup final sulk, because heaven forbid he never got to take an 89th minute penalty in a game we were winning 2-0 anyway. I was just like, oh no, man, I can't forgive him. It's bad. It's embarrassing me. You're better than that, as Chris Sutton would say. But that's amazing, guys. That's just hit the hour, so we'll put in a musical interlude. When we come back, we're going to concentrate first and foremost on some bad loan players, some of the bottom of the barrel ones. We're going to be going to pretty dark time with some of these ones in terms of the era. It's an era we've not touched yet in Bustalgia, but there's a few loan players from that one. So when we come back, we're just going to man up. We're going to do it, and then we're going to get on to some better stuff after that. So I'll put a wee musical interlude just now, and when we're back in a couple minutes, we'll get talking about some of the worst loan deals that we've had. So back in a mo.
Grab yourself a pie.
I mean, you've all that stuff at the start. You know, they won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.
And there's Russell just sitting back down just now. But speaking of loans and signings, somebody just came in the mid-season transfer window, the mid-season point of the show, an emergency loan signing. Steve-O's popped on to do a run-in. Hey. Steve-O, hello.
What's happening, boys? You all right?
Aye. How you doing?
Aye, I'm no bad. I've not been great in myself the past week, so I can't think of a better tonic for the mind and soul than coming on talking Celtic with you boys.
Love that.
The worst time in the next segment, though. And you're saying this will clear my mind. Oh man, you timed this brilliantly for the next segment, mate.
I was watching. I didn't want to jump in midstream. That would have been too cheeky. So I'm familiar with what's coming. Listen, I've filtered through piles of shite as a Celtic supporter. Bring it on. Yum yum.
Always welcome on, mate. Always welcome. Good to have you back, mate. I love that top as well. I didn't realise Celtic had done one without just the tick.
That's
the Nike as well.
07-08 season. Is it that one?
It's the anniversary one. So I don't know if you can see that.
I like that.
It's got 1967 all the way through it. They've done it in white as well.
Yeah, I can't remember any Celtic club that wasn't just the swoosh. You know, that looks minted. That's cool. I've never seen that before.
It's a belter. I always remember that season, the Vennegoor Hesselink 93rd minute winner against Rangers. Oh, under the floodlights, what a night. Before we go in though to the bad loans that I'm promising, Liam, before we came on the show, mate, you did a wee bit of digging. You were doing the homework and the research this week.
What?
Me. Yeah, Liam found that feels good.
I don't believe it. No.
Because I was under the impression the first ever loan signing that Celtic made was Kevin Pilkington from Man United, but it turns out they've actually been doing loan deals long before that. And Liam's found out a few interesting tidbits about the loan market. Go on, Liam.
Aye, so Jock Stein was very active in the market, right? So
the loan market.
Loans.
Aye. Right. So
Wow.
So before Joseph Wim Jansen, Jock Stein was the last one that was making loan signings. He signed Frank Monroe for Wolverhampton Wanderers in 1977, Jimmy Smith for Newcastle in 76, Johan Edvaldsen, big shuggy, some of the older guys might remember him, for Halberg, which is the Icelandic team. That was in 1975. And Peter Latchford on loan from West Bromwich Albion in 1975.
I know he is.
Next day you go down, Jimmy McStay had John Hunter for Kilmarnock in 41 and Willie Waddle on loan from Aberdeen in 1940s. Willie Mallon had players. He had Peter Shevlin on loan for Hamilton Academicals in 34. And here's one. Scott Duncan on loan from Rangers in 1919. You're taking players on Rangers back then. Ginger Owens on loan from Clyde in 1913. I know, wouldn't get away with that today. And then
what was the reaction like back then, Liam? Fill us in.
What was it? What was Twitter
saying? I'll kill you, Russell Brand.
We're series in Canada.
One of the pies have been to your head, mate. And then in 1906, he had Tom Sinclair for Rangers, and the first one we ever signed was Pat Gallagher in our initial season in 1888. So we were taking Rangers players on loan in the early 1900s, 2000.
Jeez. Just the idea.
I've never known that. You always associate loan moves with being a sort of a, I don't know, in my mind, like sort of the Bosman era sort of thing where transfers became more flexible. You know, obviously the freedom of contract. Before the Bosman, remember, you couldn't actually leave on a free even at the end of your term. Didn't exist.
John Bosman.
And I always thought loan signings was... Go on.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the gap between Wim Jansen and Jock Stein. So none of the Maccaris, Liam Brady's, none of them went to the loan signing.
Wow.
You know, and that might have just been the club, or maybe it's because we were trying to develop from the Jock Stein blueprint at that point. We were developing from inside, so we always had plenty of good players in the reserves and stuff at that point. But anyway, that'd be a interesting fact for you guys.
That was good.
That fact at the bottom of the screen is also true because, you know, the tagline that we don't particularly like, that old Firm thing, apparently up till about the 1920s. They actually got on and did sort of work as a unit, and then in the 20s it actually went a bit off the rails due to sectarian and bigotry hatred, mostly from like the fan bases. In the 20s, I believe there was two main gangs in the streets of Glasgow: the Norman Conks, who were a Catholic gang, and the Brigton Billy Boys, led by a guy named Billy Fullerton. Because a lot of Rangers fans don't realise that the song Billy Boys isn't actually about King William; it's actually about Billy Fullerton. But that's where it began to skew in the 20s. That's when it went off the rails between them, and they've never been the same since. They've been fighting with each other ever since, on and off the field.
So I don't get this. If the early days Celtic Rangers actually go on, then why are we not getting on with this early days Rangers team now? Like, I
suppose actually they started the game.
It's a fresh start, isn't it? Turn a new leaf. Get the friendship on board.
Aye.
Good start.
Give you 3 hugs outside Ibrox, aye?
Eh?
You give you 3 hugs outside Ibrox, aye?
3 hugs, aye. Sign. And a sign. I'll tell you a great story. Sorry, just about hugs. When Rangers 1872 RIP went to the grave, my cuz, who's a top Celtic supporter, him and his mate actually went in to Ibrox undercover, just in normal gear, and blended in with the crowd as they were waiting outside, and helped them put up the big bed sheet and all that, and giving them hugs and telling them it was all brilliant. Oh, don't give up, boys, don't give up. And dishing out the hugs and just absorbing pain, and then later on drove by them all that's madness talk. I remember they first told us that, and I was like, that is beyond mental. But he went in and dished out the hugs just to see. He wanted to see firsthand the demise of their club. I've got to take my hat off to that. That's madness.
That's sadistic, eh? That is sadistic.
Cruel.
The Braves, though. Very brave.
He said they blended in seamlessly, helped them put up the sheet, and then whenever they were starting to leave, was giving it the don't leave, let's give them a piece, and they went round to the gates at the side and what have you. He shouted through to some people trying to sneak out. Mental.
Phil, hit me with some bad loans.
Shane Duffy. I'm going to throw that grenade in there and just let you discuss.
Because
I'll set it up.
It's not the wrong type of signing, Phil. That was the right signing, in my opinion, at that time. I was excited.
So was I.
Was coming in. I thought, for whatever that Celtic side maybe lacks, and particularly with Lennon in charge, I thought he'll be the old school reactionary to Lennon's methods. It's his lifelong dream, whatever, very much Robbie Keane-esque. And all that to play for us. It's the 10-year-old campaign. He's Ireland's captain right now.
Yep.
Every time I see Ireland play, he scores. I was like, he's got bundles of Premier League experience, and he's going to bring that no-nonsense factor.
Yep.
I thought that is what we want. I genuinely thought that was the signing that wouldn't go as far as saying secures the 10, Phil. But I would have said that was one of the finishing pieces of the puzzle, of the jigsaw. I'm looking at that going, that is exactly the profile and exact type of player I think the team need to add to that first team. It's just a baffling one, that, eh?
If you had a list there, every box gets ticked. All the stuff you've just rattled off there, you're like, everything is set up for this to be right. But that whole crop, I say, so many things went wrong that season, but we brought in Duffy on loan. Obviously, Diego Laxalt came with a lot of, he's going to be good. A guy that I feel sorry for, even though he actually joined on loan the season before. And we talked earlier on about like Tonev being a player we were linked with, then got him a little further down the line. Moy El Yunusi, who I think is quite unlucky because he was good, but the 2 seasons he played at Celtic, one gets cut short because of the coronavirus pandemic, and then the second season that he's there is the empty stadium season. So I thought he was bad. And then, of course, we ended up signing John Joe Kenny as well in the January window. So the loan signings over that couple of years, just brutal. But Laxalt, he was in the World Cup Team of the Year or something in 2018, wasn't he? Or the Team of the World Cup. Yeah, the left back. But but the Duffy stuff, Liam, do you agree with Russell on that one? Because I say when you list off all the things there, all the characteristics, you're like, this can't fail. This cannot be bad.
Everything. So the night he signed, the day I think he signed with us, he had an international with Ireland against Bulgaria, and I was over there and I watched it in the game, and he was commanding, and I think he scored the tying goal at that point. It was World Cup qualification, and I'm looking, that's going to be the future captain of Celtic right there. That guy's going to come and he's going to be absolutely brilliant. We've been looking for a big dominant Celtic back, and here we've got one in a game that genuinely wanted to come and play with us. I was really looking forward to it. And again, he's went back and had no bad season with Brighton since he's left us. He's went back to being steady again. But I don't know what happened, but there was times out there I thought he was wearing roller skates. It's like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going? That point, there was wee Israeli forward that played with, I can't remember who he was with at the time, Motherwell or something. Remember him absolutely just addressing him like twice in the 6-yard box and then putting it past the goalie. And I'd never seen you could just see at that point he'd lost all confidence in himself, and it just went worse and worse. And I don't know if it was problems. I know he lost his dad, and some boys that affects more than others, and some of us know that, right? And so that might have been a hard season with no fans or that. I mean, if he'd have came up to Celtic Park when it was a full crowd singing and all that, all the songs that he'd grown up with, all the stuff that he heard, his dad would have been playing with him. And we met to stadium, that's probably not the case, So you can see how that could get in your head.
See what Ian's saying, Ian Matheson in the comments. Good to have you in the bus, but I mean, see when he's saying, I think he wasn't used to having much of the ball.
Yeah.
This is an out and out defender, which we thought from our, our lens, That's what Celtic need. Someone who's going to be winning every corner that comes in. He's going to put his head in the ball. But you actually need to flip it and go, but that's not really how it works in the SPFL. The thing is, you're going to have the ball more of the time. It's how your concentration levels are met when you are then faced with these situations. I think he is someone who is a backs to the wall, excuse the term, but a backs to the wall defender. He is someone that wants to be under the cosh, in the trenches. You know what I mean? And I think it's just putting in cross after cross into his box, and he'll defend like his life depends on it. I think he was definitely, Ian, I agree with that. I think that was a huge part of it. The no fan stuff, I totally take on board. It was the same for every professional footballer, though. That's where the argument falls apart. Some of it, you come on, you had enough experience to navigate this like so many others did. But that being said, I think maybe the style of football, that was a real jump for him. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are, but I think he just wasn't used to being in a team that dominated games between international football with Ireland, who were never that type of team, and then you look at the Premier League. Brighton weren't the high-flying Premier League side that they are right now. Let's get that right,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're right, mate. I think, in terms of, just to come back and echo what you say, when he signed, I was all for it. When he started like a house on fire with a couple of goals, and you're like, this is exactly what we need. I kind of thought it was going to galvanise us, because when you looked at our centre at the time, we kind of lacked that wee bit of grit, and he just thought it'd be like the gel that'd hold them all together. And and when you guys like Barkas and the likes, you kind of thought he's going to bring on these kind of guys and instill a level of sort of confidence in folks. You know what I mean? And it never really happened. And I think you're right. In terms of some of the teams that he was playing for, it was more a case of head it clear, boot it clear, all cost type of thing. But at the same time, if you look back at some of the defenders that we've had previously, they've not always been great with their feet. And even if you look at Starfelt, for example, great defender. I always say very good with the ball in front, very good when the play's in front of him. But as soon as he needs to turn or do anything, that's when he's in trouble. And Duffy was like that. He was very much like that. See if it was in front of him and it was just deal with it, he was very good. But as soon as he had to do any level of football or thinking or turn and get in behind, that's when it all fell apart. But I think it's a combination of the style of play, but also I think the no fans thing. And he was obviously going through some personal troubles at the time. And that's going to really be playing on your mind when it's silent. There's going to be no distraction, and that noise and that volume and that emotion will drive you on, and it'll focus on what you're doing. But it's like throwing you out on a pitch when your head's up your arse and just going, right, go on, mate. You're going to be looking about and thinking about stuff, and I think that's probably what it is. A wee bit of that. Look at where he is now.
I take that point.
He's just signed for Fulham.
I take that point. See, just in terms, obviously, we're doing a loan-themed show, Phil.
Yep.
Put this one back to you, right? Now, I'm not trying to take over hosting duties. I just find the I find it I really sort of I find it a very, very fascinating conundrum. Here's a question: out of all the loan signings, and obviously I know you do your homework as much as you might not have sent notes this week, right? You'll have done your homework. You know every loan signing we've made, apart from the ones for 19 Canteen, right? But I bet you any money, I think out of signings that came in, he is the biggest disappointment for what he did in terms of reputation when he joined and what he actually delivered, because a lot of the loan signings you get, you're underwhelmed by anyway. When you look through some of the names, you're like, all right, what's the point in that? And then others have came, like we spoke about at the top of the show, with that bit of pedigree, Keane, Bellamy, for example. And you thought, Mo Elyounoussi, Premier League player that cost 14 million quid, you thought, I think he looked like he was a very good player. Duffy came with this huge, as we've talked about already, every one of us, huge wave of excitement, very strong pedigree, both internationally and at the top flight in England. And I think he'll go down as, in terms of what he did compared to the reputation he came with, he probably fell the furthest short out of everyone. I'm not trying to say that in a cruel way. I just mean in terms of what he actually produced.
Yeah, he, as you said earlier on, everything was set up for it to be perfect. But I think the warning signs should have been there in the very first game, because even though he did score, Do you remember when he scored against Ross County, he also injured Christopher Julian for a few months in the process? It was a corner, and he just attacked the ball. It was one of those get out of my way type of moments, and he just shoved Christopher Julian to the ground and ended up injuring his lower back, and Julian was out for a few months. Then Julian comes back and slides into a goalpost and cracks his knee, and it was like, Julian can't get any luck at all. But yeah, the very first game that Shane Duffy played, not only did he score, which is a good thing, he also injured the centre-back partner for a few months as well, and it was like, all the starts to make, and then it just didn't get much better. But there's a lot of fair points coming up in the chat though. Things like his father passing away was an issue as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Aye.
Sorry, CB Duffy, can I just quickly throw in a question? So first, there's two questions, but one and the same. Do you think Duffy was signed with a view that we would have kept him on? And also, we're talking about being under the cosh. Do you think he would have been better suited to us playing in the likes of a Champions League? But let's face it, we were getting absolutely hammered. So let's just assume it went all right for him. Do you think we would have kept him on? And do you think we would have seen the best of him in that higher level?
Yes. I think Steve-O's question is absolutely brilliant, because the reason I say that is the hope was, that for the beginning of that season, remember we went into that as champions. I know this season, but it wasn't just losing the 10. It was another catastrophic failure, let's be honest, in qualification for the big cup. And you're absolutely right. And this is what I'm saying about motivation and stuff can work in different ways. And this is what I'm saying about John Guidetti. See, with John Guidetti is at Celtic, he needed that balance of the straightforward games that he was scoring all the time, but then those very, very tough asks, your Champions League ones and that, to mix it up, right?
Inter Milan.
Keep you motivated. Inter Milan, he scores that equalising goal, he comes alive in that. Whereas I think with Shane Duffy, it was going to be every game very much this dead atmosphere. I take that point on board, that you maybe get lost in your thoughts then, particularly when you're not having to defend much, which is your focal point. If that was being mixed up each midweek, with Shane Duffy up against a high alert team, a team that he's got to be completely razor sharp focused, that would have probably allowed for a better bit of form, I think, domestically. That's so true. I hadn't even thought of that. But yeah, but also on top of that, yes, I think if we'd, qualified for the Champions League that campaign, I think we would have went on to win the league. And I also think, yes, he would have been someone that Lennon, for example, who would have still been in situ had we done those things, would very much have said, fucking aye, he's my type of guy. Do you know what I mean? I don't think there's any much doubt about that, to be honest.
As Liam said a few minutes ago, he's the type of guy that would have went on to become club captain had everything went differently. We were a success. He stayed full time. Scott Brown does leave like he does. Shane Duffy probably would have became the new club captain ahead of Callum McGregor. That's the type of thing I'm going to say. Lennon boy would have still been in the job. Ange Postecoglou doesn't happen. The 10 in a row happens. Everything's different. An alternative universe. So that's the type of thing. He had ticked all the boxes to be that. And yeah, it just didn't. Oh well, Laxalt was
Laxalt. I think I get some sort of eye aids for watching Laxalt.
For those listening on your catch up or whatever, right? Mark Kearney, at least COVID saved me from watching Laxalt and Duffy in the flesh, and for that I forgive China.
Hey, do you remember the photograph that was photoshopped during the trip to Dubai? It caught a lot of podcasts off guard because they thought it was real. It was a brilliant Photoshop of Shane Duffy sitting braiding Laxalt's hair on one of the swing lunges.
Yep.
There was a couple of podcasts went off their head thinking it was real. It was absolutely brilliant.
Is that a Photoshop?
Yeah. Oh, come on. I'm good at that.
Oh, I remember the phone.
Do you think big sausage finger Shane Duffy's got the dexterity to do that here?
Well, I don't know. I think he's actually had Kanos in the past. I don't know. I think when Beckham had that phase, Shane Duffy was rocking them in the house. But definitely what was real was the pints of lager. And once I seen the pints, I thought this photo could be legit. because Lenny's sitting with a beer and that, you know what I mean? It's so Scott Brown. I thought, well, there's nothing photoshopped about that aspect. You know what I mean?
Well, you guys were talking on TNF last night, Russell, about the left back over the last few years and how Greg Taylor was there, but there's always somebody been coming in that you think is going to replace Greg Taylor, but he just sees him off. Diego Laxalt's another one in that category because it felt like he was going to, he was going to come in, he was going to be something, but in the end, Laxalt went away with his tail between his legs, never materialised too much, and Greg Taylor went on from strength to strength. But see, Laxalt was in the sort of team of the tournament from the 2018 World Cup. Came with a bit of pedigree, didn't he, Russell?
Yeah, well, he did. And at that point, I think Greg Taylor was going for the Venus and Serena Williams look, or the braids at that time. We just didn't see it because we were all in lockdown. But that was apparently what wee Greg looked like before the season kicked back in. But Laxalt came in. I thought he was going to do very good things. Remember, we got beat 2-0 off them, and I thought he was our best player by a long distance in that game. His debut, I think it was as well.
That was his debut, that was.
He'll do all right. He'll do all right for us. I mean, and then you do, whether you like it or not, the pedigree and the CV that comes with these sort of guys will blind you to an extent initially. When they do something good, you go, oh, what a player. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if someone comes in that's an underwhelming signing and does something the same, you go, well, I'd expect him to do that. He plays for Celtic. These sort of narratives go on in your mind that they can change what it is you're actually looking at. With Laxalt, though, it was quite evident that the high opinion of him initially, seemed to go in I don't even know how to describe it, like a fucking log flume that way. Do you know what I mean? Just plummeted quick. The turn on him came along quite quick. I don't even think him playing, FIFA on Twitch in a Celtic jersey was going to save his fucking career. Do you know what I mean? It was like that virtue signaling stuff, mate, ain't going to work anymore. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I just again caught in the wrong movie. And again, by the way, a signing without any thought, a signing to that was just basically we need left back available on loan, international, sign him. And it's like there's no thought process here. There's no plan. This is just that's that position filled, and it looks on paper because the caps he's got, that World Cup Team of the Year, whatever it was, and the fact he's coming, was it AC Milan or Inter Milan?
AC Milan.
AC Milan. And the fact he's coming for there, it's going to get the fans a wee bit, their hopes up. I don't think he was signed as part of any sort of, we spoke obviously the other week about Lennon's first season. I called it Lenny's second time at the football club, Lenny Light. Lite, Lenny Light, because he was just these players. He's not went out and identified Diego Laxalt. No. This isn't part of. See the first time round, these guys were all coming with a very similar identity and a point to prove. Even the young folk, you could look at Izagiri and go, well, wasn't that a similar gamble to Laxalt, South America, and how long would it take him to sell? But Lenny had been very much front, left, and centre in these boys when they signed. He'd got them on board. I think Laxalt's offered to him and has already kind of signed without Lennon having any involvement whatsoever. And I think, unfortunately, with you going to winning the most important season in Celtic's history, potentially, you could argue, if they won the 10, I think it would be described as that bit in many quarters, maybe other than 67, obviously. But by the way, a lot of folk prefer domestic success to European success, judging by plenty of the feedback we get. But what I would say is, he also joined, not just in a season of such importance, but in a season that was completely unique and totally surreal. And at that point in time, I really think, even more so than ever, you need to have, when it's no fans here and so much at stake, i.e. a 10 in a row, that has to be players signed in the image of the manager, by the manager, for a plan to go and attack it. And I think he was very much just part of the fucking, blindfold yourself, get a transfer list of loan players available on a free and just pick one at random that play in that position that you need covered. And that's
this guy's available. Yeah, this guy's available. Get him. Oh, AC Milan.
He shouldn't have accepted that though. So he's on his own. That one, he's got to look at himself and accept it. That one that came back to bite him, that he went in and allowed himself to be told what was happening, told he was getting no backroom staff. Effectively, I think, eventually told what players would be joining his club.
Aye. I don't think we need to waste any time on one of the other loanees that season, John Joe Kenny. We'll just skip over that one. All I remember about him is him giving away a corner from the halfway line.
Hits off his knee or something, does it? Flies out against Rangers, wild.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the fuck happened there.
They scored from it. I know.
I actually don't know what the fuck happened there. I still don't know how it happened.
Oh, I know.
It's mental. As well. I think he's the worst. He's one of the worst. And they absolutely kept playing him. Even when Kennedy took care from Lennon, I said, oh, he's going to have to drop John Joe Kenny and Geir Olsen.
Is he not in Germany now?
He is. He plays for
Hertha
Berlin.
Is it Hertha Berlin?
Hertha Berlin or Hoffenheim.
Worst player I've ever seen on loan. Worst player I've seen in the hoops.
He's dreadful.
Aye, you know, we joke when we talk about scrambling about for signings. John Joe Kenny's name, it's like you sound the alarm for John Joe Kenny, but honestly, possibly one of the worst players I've ever seen in my life. Absolute fucking bin juice, terrible in the skip. Honestly, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I think I caught some sort of eye aids watching that during that season. Honestly, horrendous. Diego Laxalt as well, by the way. Where is he now? I want to know.
Don't know, man. I'm not sure.
Horrendous. Honestly, like, I know I'm being dramatic, but aside from it being a horrendous season to endure, some of the piles of shite that we had to put up with, honest to God, man. Seriously. Come on.
Pies on my yes, Ryan. That's what I said earlier. That's a belter. Steve, I'll look back to you on this one. Earlier on, when I mentioned a name, I saw you do Mo El Yunusi. Tell me your truths on him. What do you feel about El Yunusi? I've seen a couple of people in the chat said El Yunusi is the best loan we've ever had. I don't know about that, but I thought he was quite good.
For me, I've obviously covered it, but you've covered it. Best loan Celtic ever had that never happened was Craig Bellamy by a country mile. Yeah. My opinion, what a player! What a player! El Yunusi, for me, fantastic player. Had all the tools, very, very skillful. I don't know if it was by design of what he was going through and what our entire team went through, that he was not consistent enough for me. And folk will argue that depends on how he was played or where he was played and what system he get put into, because we've changed it about a few times. I just didn't see the clamour for him that everybody had. With hindsight and looking at it now, I can see how, yes, he would probably work a treat in a Ange Postecoglou system.
You're right. But Steve, see individually, I look at the players that I think you're right. He would have done better under Ange. He doesn't get ahead of many of those wingers. I think
no, he doesn't. And that, absolutely, and that's the thing. I think when we actually break it down, we look at a lot of these guys that were in loan that we sort of fall in love with, and even Duffy. Let's use him and Duffy side by side. Those were guys that if we had 110, we probably would have wanted to sign. And they probably would have had big fees. They probably would have been the equivalent to Carter Vickers and Jota. And if I'm being honest with you, I don't think either of them are. I know what I'd rather have.
El Yunusi cost Southampton 14 million.
15, yeah.
14 million pounds.
And I just don't think. Listen, he had some moments of brilliance, right? It's absolutely. I'm not by any stretch saying the guy's not a good player. That would be complete nonsense, right? But I just don't think that he was. I think if we signed him, we wouldn't have been right. It'd probably been Ryan Kentish, where I think that further down the line, folk could be saying we're not getting long-term value for money here. It's on or it's off, and that's what I think. That's my take on it.
Liam, my El Yunusi, I'm not sure if he'd have been your type of guy. I'm not sure, but I've worked with Liam for a while now. I've just got a hunch. You wouldn't have been convinced by him. Tell me if I'm wrong, of course.
You're wrong. I liked him.
Oh, you liked him?
I thought he was good. I thought there was a couple of things I liked what he did. I remember once he scored a winning goal with his head in, it was an absolute cracker. And the TV interview was saying, well, you don't score many with your head, not. And he went, I do. Yes, I do. Who told you I didn't? Like, he got his back there. I liked it. I liked that it was taking the interview on. Also, you go back to that game where we won in Lazio. There was a moment that I think it was either the Lazio or Celtic, but there was a moment in the midfield where he made that whole goal happen. He managed to get his body in the way of the defender, just sort of opened it up for the ball to get access through, and was able to get a great ball onto, I think it was in Jam or somebody like that. Whatever it was a second goal for us. And I remember he was good at that. And yeah, I thought he was a good player, but bad timing. Yep. I think any other time, I think he would have got into our team. I thought he was a class player.
I think Dixie's nailed it for me, Phil.
In front of Forest.
Playing in front of Forest and Laxalt, the two most probably, benched out the lot. The lot. I think he's in that halfway house for me. I think there's, I think Maeda, Abada, Jota for me are definitely far better options. And if an El Yunusi, the money he would have cost, etc., that Steve was alluding to, that then costs you one of those. That costs you one of those guys. Do you know what I mean? One of those guys then can't be signed. Whether it's Abada at £4 million or Jota at 6.8, whatever it may have been. That's taken up by an El Yunusi. I don't think it would be as effective. I get the numbers that either of those two to achieve. So,
I mean,
he might get the Forest.
What he's got that neither Abada or Maeda have is great technical ability. Very good on the ball. Very, very, very accomplished on the ball, which they don't have. Let's be honest. You could maybe argue Abada, but they I just think they're very sort of basic. I don't think their technical ability is great, but what they have is more intensity, and I think they will score you. Well, not Maeda, might have his Cooper or something going in the net, but they'll know. He'll maybe score you more goals, but they'll score you more goals. He'll look better on the eye, and I think the balance as a season. I don't know what
I'd rather. Take that. See that? I forgot that. Mindy was on his phone.
Yeah. And it was Paul Lambert said something in the newspaper about saying he disrespected Jock Stein by doing that. Was it Lambert that said that?
I don't know. I think Lenny might have said something, but this is the best bit. Then flip it. We love this ruthless Ange, right? Aye. Love ruthless Ange. Would Ange Postecoglou have put up with a player, whether it was in the COVID era or not, and Postecoglou's in charge, sitting on his mobile phone in the dugout? I think he'd be like that. Are you on Instagram, young man? Off you pop.
See, are you on Instagram, mate? And really emphasise that, mate. Then you know you're in trouble.
A wee egg timer, because he's going to be coming on.
Don't ask for a day off tomorrow either.
Aye, that's
make of that, Phil.
That is a fair point. I think Ange wouldn't tolerate that. But then again, was that a sign of the times where you just knew, like, the player himself knew, I can get away with that. And this dressing room's the Wild West here. I can just get away with it because, the manager hasn't got any control in this dressing room, because that dressing room was really toxic that year. It really was.
This is the thing. See, this is the thing. Lenny just tells the truth there, right? And he was getting ridiculed, but it's all about results at the end of the day. See if the results aren't going right. When you tell the truth, folk go, too emotional. If you're winning, you can get away with delivering it any way you want, as Ange has proven, right? That is the truth, right? But, if you imagine, Ange probably wouldn't say it at that moment in time. He'd find out first. He wouldn't be that open and upfront and honest, which, to be honest, if you're going to, batter someone with a stick, the honesty stick, I don't think is a particularly harsh one to hit someone with. And Lennon is just being upfront and honest. He better not have. If he does, I'll have a word with him. Ange wouldn't react to that. I don't know anything about that. But once El Yunusi's at the door, there would be a quote, he won't be playing Snake 2 on his phone anymore. Do you know what I mean? In our stand, do you know what I mean? You can imagine it. Yeah. Ange waits till he's got them. See, Lenny's an emotional speaker. He speaks
he does.
with the heart and for the gut. Ange is someone who goes in with two Tommy guns apart, and he's just got his lines already made, and he waits for a journalist to ask a question in the mould of what he knew would come, and he's got that answer primed for that. Do you know what I mean? And that's when he pulls the trigger. Whereas Lenny reacts, see the honest truth. If that was a quote by, I don't know, Jock Stein or Martin O'Neill, we'd all be saying, do you know what I mean? Didn't fuck with them, did you?
Yeah.
And it's just, we were losing matches at the time, so suddenly Lennon looks like he's...
Lennon couldn't do, just couldn't do right from wrong that season. Everything went against him. He's a fan at the end of the day. It's like putting any of us in charge of Celtic. We think with our heart at times. That's what Lennon did a lot, and he'll speak with us. So Yeah, you can't blame him. But yeah, I remember the whole phone debacle thing. And yeah, Mark did say something in the chat about Paul Lambert was in the newspaper saying something like Jock Stein didn't die for this or something like that. And it's like, I'm sure that was disrespecting Jock Stein, you know, for sitting on his phone. But we'll move on. We'll move on from that. I say another couple of bad loans you can throw in there, which obviously resulted in sort of end of Brendan Rodgers' time. You guys like Jeremy Toljan, Oliver Buck, you know, that window, you know, where it was quite evident that things were very wrong at boardroom level. And
he's got some agent, by the way.
Oh, I know. Best
How does he keep getting jobs?
Oh, ridiculous. Ollie
Buck.
Buck.
Oh, horrendous. I know. Oh,
like,
where is he? Werder Bremen?
No, he signed for an English Championship club recently. I think Millwall.
What?
Do you not remember? Do you not remember he had that very small window of looking actually all right, and folk were like, "We need to sign him." Fucking hell, man! Wow.
It was purely because he could run.
But see, my mate's always said this, right? See if a player comes to you and you ask them how good they are, and how many times somebody went, "He's rapid." See if that's all you've got. Fuck off in the bin. He's rapid.
Did he not go back to Germany before this new?
He did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
I'm sure.
Can't remember who it was.
He's on loan from Werder Bremen to Millwall right now. He's a Werder Bremen player. Yeah.
So he's on a Werder Bremen size contract right now. That's a Bundesliga contract.
Yep.
He's been stealing away. Somebody needs to get him charged for fraud, by the way, because he's fucking outrageous.
He's a money laundering scheme. That's what he is. He's a money laundering scheme. There's a theory going round that apparently Alvaro Morata's a money laundering scheme. That explains all his big money moves. But yeah, Oliver Buck easily falling out. Yeah, there's a conspiracy theory out there that Alvaro Morata is actually a money laundering scheme, and that explains all the big moves that he gets. But Buck could easily fall into that category. Also, there was Timo Weir that window, who actually looked quite good, but that window, I say, that's kind of like the beginning of the end, and Rodgers left a few weeks after that. But I thought for the final segment, you know, we'll end on a positive after looking at some of the bad loans. We could be here all night talking about players. We're only scratching the surface.
Peter Grant.
Oh yes, see this is it. We're going to get this all the time, but hey, that's good. And remember,
John Paul McBride, that had me laughing. John Paul McBride, that is good, Pat. Very good.
But I said at the top of the show, we'll talk about the loans. I was saying, like, some fans out there would prefer that, you know, the team signs players permanently. We don't like this idea that we're bringing in a player purely for the benefit of another team, which is been true for a lot of the players, especially from the Man City connection, where it feels like we're bringing in one of their younger players to develop them, send them back. Most fans around the world always feel your team to go and buy a player, you know, outright. But here's the thing: I've noticed that Celtic in recent years, probably since Rodgers, and I've also continued it now, this try before you buy type idea, where you take a player on loan for a year with a fee attached, where if you want to make it permanent, this is what it's going to cost you. And obviously we've seen, you know, we've reaped the benefits of some of the moves in the last few years. And the first one that comes to mind would be Odsonne Édouard, Celtic's record transfer. Because, I mean, then we knew what we were getting when we did make the £9 million move, made it permanent, Russell. But that first year that he had, even though Griff was still playing well, Dembélé was still the man. But this was also... Dembélé, there was always a danger he was going to leave, give us 2-3 years tops.
Yep.
This was the guy that was coming in to replace him, but rather than sign him as soon as Dembélé leaves, it's like, bring him in for a year. And obviously he got used to the system, and he just continued on, and just it was seamless, the transition. But yeah, this try before you buy mentality, you know, you bring in a player with a fee. But yeah, Edward's one of the first ones I think of in that bracket.
Well, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I think when he signs that permanently for £9 million, we don't quite jump up and down and clap as excitedly when we realise by the last day of that window, you know, the king up top at that point, not the king of kings, but the king at that point, Moussa Dembélé, will actually be out. And really what they did was buy a player for half the price they were going to sell on. You know, they've sold a player, then brought in one for half the price. I thought the excitement that arrived with the Edward permanent deal was he is obviously a grade up on what Griffiths is going to bring. And I think by after 2 seasons, Griffiths has done, by the way, a lot of good bits under Rodgers, but there was an underlying feeling he was not a Rodgers guy, right?
Yeah.
And I dare say, when you look at how his career's progressed since, I think one of those will be professionalism and fitness. I think that will have came down to, and he's not got the drive to be what I want from our players. Do you know what I mean? He took us so far, but the next step will be, and I felt that, wow, see if it's now French Eddie signed for £9 million on a permanent deal, competing with Moussa, potentially playing up top at times like we've seen at Ibrox. I start going, fucking hell, now we are talking. I think my excitement at that point, with hindsight, would have been slightly, a fair bit more, calmer had I known that by the end of that window, actually, it was a 20-year-old signing to be your number one striker for half the price you would be selling on.
Yeah.
What was the main man? And maybe as well, if I'm being honest, from an emotional point of view, someone I had invested in, if you like, in Moussa, which I hadn't quite done yet with Édouard in his first loan spell. Do you know what I mean? I think Moussa had, he tickled your balls, Phil. Let's put it that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
But he does. He's one of those guys. He had everything. You know what I mean? Like that you're looking for in a hero. And I just, it's tinged slightly. The record signing thing is a brilliant optic, but really it was signing a guy for half the price you're about to sell your main man for in the end of that window. Just being cynical as always.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think when I thought it was going to be those two, and maybe Griffiths has fallen away, I thought, fuck me, do you know what I mean? This club is going in the right direction. Do you know what I mean? And that wasn't quite the reality.
Well, touching on what you said there, Russell, and Liam will come to you on this, where obviously we got deprived of getting Dembélé and Édouard on a more permanent basis because of just the timing and the way it crossed over. But again, I think this is a thing across the board, not just for us, but football fans, we're a bit greedy. We like the excitement of a new signing. And when Édouard did make the deal permanent, it technically wasn't a new signing because he'd been there for a year, so you didn't get that, it's a brand new signing. But again, I go back to my point, I think Celtic did it the right way in terms of they gave him a year, because he was still very young, remember, gave him a year to settle, and he just continued on from there. But yeah, I think the excitement would have been more if out of nowhere we just announced we're signing this £9 million striker from PSG. Just that would have got fans, this is amazing, new player. But it might not have worked out. It could have worked out differently. It might not have settled as well as he did. But yeah, we talked about Édouard. We actually did an episode on Édouard and Dembélé, didn't we? And we actually had a go about both of them. In fact, Dembélé won the poll massively, if I remember correctly. He absolutely scalped them in it. But Édouard, again, going back to some of the things that we said on that night, what you got to remember is Dembélé terrorised Rangers, and Édouard also terrorised them in his own way. And you could probably say that the Rangers team that Édouard was up against at times was better than the Rangers team that Dembélé was. But that doesn't take away from how good Dembélé is. Dembélé was fucking phenomenal. But I think Édouard, a lot of people forget, and I think his departure for the club kind of, skews him in a wee bit with some fans where they're still not happy at how it ended with Édouard. But he was a quality player, man. He really was, wasn't he?
I think he was one of these players that played off fans and adulation. You see there's some players that come and get it, and you've got to admit, of all the songs that you've heard in football, I Want to Be a Bard is one of the best. I've had friends that don't even support Celtic show me that on their phone and think it was like really cool, us singing to the Stone Roses. And so sometimes what you do is you just sort of like frame a perspective or an imaginary sort of narrative, and you do everything you can to force them into it. And of course, you're going to force them into it because we've got this great song that we want to sing anytime he does anything positive. And I think that's a big part. That part is missing now, from him being at Crystal Palace. He's not being adored. He's not getting that adoration. And somehow we managed to put that into him. And without that gone, just like maybe, the Gary Hoopers and, some of the other people that we've adored that have went on and never found that sort of like love or adoration for a fan base. I think it's almost like the 12th man, as they say, doing American football. I think we've got that's probably one of the strongest players we've had, the most consistent player, is us being that 12th man, and then at missing during lockdown, you can see how that affected some of the players that we signed. And I think, who doesn't want to be adored?
Oh, without a shadow of doubt. And also, I just saw that's a thinker, Russell. That's a thinker, that one, mate. Well,
someone asked in the comments what pi equals.
Oh,
right.
Talking
to you and numerical.
No, I know what that is.
V3.14.
Pythagoras' theorem. Yep. Well done. It just caught my eye there at the corner. I was like, oh, 3.14, very, very clever. But no, you're right in what you're saying about Edouard. He definitely fed off the fans, and no surprise in the final season. But the weird thing is, Steve, he still scored a lot of goals that season. He still scored, was it like 20-something goals he got up to?
I know.
But he couldn't carry everything that's wrong. We've dissected what went wrong with that team a wee while ago, talking about Shane Duffy and stuff. But overall, what was your feelings on Edouard, Steve, just as a whole?
Do you know what? It's, again, hindsight and reflection is a great thing. And I think, as we said, discussed on the previous, if you sit them side by side, Edouard Dembélé, because they're always going to be compared, because of their time and what have you, being the French connection and all that youngness. I think that, Dembélé is, in my opinion, the far better player. Obviously, when Dembélé left, everybody thought it was because he was a shithouse. Everybody jumped on the Edouard train, but now we kind of know the story. Folk are coming round to Dembélé, and you compare them a wee bit more evenly. I think both of them had a very similar start, and I don't know if you are of this opinion, but I thought when Dembélé was first getting brought into the side, he looked a bit awkward. I was like, boy, looks like Bambi and Ice. He was kind of falling over himself, and you're like, what the fuck have we bought here? And then he had his moment, and bang, that was it. And very much so with Edouard as well. When he first came in, I'm like, they want 9 million for this guy if we are going to take him on. What the fuck is this? You know what I mean? And I always remember the game against Hamilton, and he scores an absolute Snyder. It's a total squib, right? Yeah. And
is that his first goal?
Yeah, I don't know if I think it might be right.
I think it was.
And I'm going to throw it with my mate Stevie. I always bring it up. I love casting up to him. I remember that time you told me Edouard was shite, right? Because Stevie writes guys off at the soonest possible opportunity, right? Brilliant guy, season ticket holder, big time fan, long, a lot older than me. But he's sometimes quick to write guys off. Yeah. And Edouard was very much in the wrote off club. And I'll be honest, that fans and people can influence you. And I thought when I first saw Edouard with that kind of initial loan season, when he was kind of bedding in, I thought, this guy's like, he doesn't look. It was never the finished article, but I thought, I don't know. I'm not sure about this guy. He's not a patch on it. Dembélé, he's nowhere near it. And, it was quickly proven wrong. And I think that, much like Liam's saying, you're seeing him going to Palace, and it's a different ball game. You're a sort of small fish in a small pond, and the pond being the team, in a gigantic ocean that is the Premier League. And it's hard to be that guy. And I don't know. I think he's very much a confidence player, and he feeds off the energy of being the main man and being, as you say, adored. Cliche as fuck, but he genuinely does. And I think even though in that COVID season he still put in a good turn, how much of that's down to the fact that we're Celtic and you get great service, and let's face it, the teams you're playing against just aren't quite as good. So I think that's I think as his career develops, I honestly don't see him going much further than he is right now. Whereas,
could he be guilty as well, like we were talking earlier, of having that voice in the ear? We don't know who it is, but someone's saying to him, "Go to the Premier League. You're going to play."
Where you buy into your own thing. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. I think, see, with both Edouard and Dembélé, both of them were, they're pissing in the wind. Look at the talent they've got. They have, do you know what I mean? Let's use all the cliches. Fucking swimming in the tide, pissing in the wind. Like, they're not getting anywhere near that French team. I don't care how many goals he did. It's not happening. Right? It's not happening. It's just it's not happening. I mean, I think is it.
Steve, you played on the French under-23 team for about 7 years.
Exactly. I think he was the oldest under-23. and this is the thing.
Your team.
I think
a lot of good players that might have, like, he's probably seen guys like Mbappe and people like that go on and end up going past him and playing for the full national team that he's played with at that level. And so I think that's probably where it is as well too. And he doesn't know. He thinks maybe Celtic were holding him back and he should have been playing at a different level.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't know who's talking to him, you know, and that sort of thing. You know,
I mean, I think it's...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, you were just breaking up a wee bit. I think, listen, we can sit here and speculate. That's what we do. That's what the poetic license is to do this and have these conversations, right? But see, for being honest, like, there's got to be a wee bit of self-awareness to yourself as a player, surely, isn't there? I mean, he plays in the same, as you say, as a lot of Mbappe and stuff, but, you know, it's like anybody in a job. You know when somebody that you work alongside is shit hot and you're just all right. You sometimes just got to go, Keys, not quite as good as him, right? You've got to get a wee bit of perspective of where you are on the pecking line. So, I think
is that where the other voice comes in, though, Steve-O?
Listen,
is that when someone's just telling you sweet nothings that are maybe a wee bit beyond what the actual reality is?
Aye, within reason. I think listen, we always talk about the agent, and everybody has this cartoon image of the agent being the big guy in the dodgy coat that's whispering, you know what I mean, and try to usher you away and do bad things. But, you know, I think guys will sign and they'll be like, you signed for Celtic for 9 million, you played for PSG, you played for Celtic, you're in the shop window, the next move's the next one, the next one's the next one, and it's all about building, right? Let's just use Ollie Burke as an example. Ollie Burke's agent must tell him he's shit hot, right? Because he's had more moves and he's made more money than Edouard anyway, and Edouard is a far better player. Yep. So I think there is an element of it to be chatting in the ear and building up and getting you high in your own supplies, to say. And I think, you know, there's a Juranovic as well, and dare I say it, maybe even a Giacomakis, right? But
yeah,
that's modern football.
Yeah,
modern football agents, their nut is based on shifting a guy on for the next big fee. And I think there is a wee bit of play in it, and I think it kind of unsettle it. And maybe seeing your cohorts around you moving on and going to other things, as Liam says, maybe plays into it a wee bit. But I think agent power has a lot to do with it.
Aye, it does with Edouard in particular. I think the Oliver Buck comparison is fantastic. Again, just that guy must have the best agent in the world.
He must. He must.
On the head that he'll be a richer player than Odsonne Édouard. That is mind-blowing.
I think he's the highest value Scottish player ever. I don't know that. Not that that'd be hard, but by some distance.
Yep.
His fees are outrageous, and he's rat shit.
Yeah,
honestly,
he's terrible.
He's legit terrible.
Oh, he's Werder Bremen right now. He's actually a Werder player, even though he's on loan at Millwall. Yeah, he's raking in a Bundesliga contract. But before we'll end up to present day just now. Then, as I'm talking about Edouard, how he was one of those try before you buy ones, and I guess the two most relevant ones to that right now would obviously be Jota and Carter Vickers. I've seen CCV's name a couple of times in the chat tonight as the best loan signing we've ever had. It could be argued. CCV's from, but that is, again, something, Russell, I know that you've argued about with people on Twitter. Surprise. People piling on you on Twitter for an opinion. But obviously, you were talking about finances and stuff like that.
To be fair, me arguing with people is a pretty accurate description as well, to be honest. Can't have it both ways.
But remember the finances debate from the start of the season, the ring-fenced money. People weren't grasping that you cannot agree that deal a year ago without this in favor that you have $6 million to spend on them. But they two are a great example. Again, we'd had them for a year. They settled in, and it was a seamless transition once we made a permanent deal. And two phenomenal players are still to this day in the current team, linchpins.
for me, the reason the Jota one is the winner in that debate, shall it be? You know, remember, I don't know if you remember. In fact, you will, Phil. You remember fucking everything. But a year ago, about now on the bus, we were debating, and it was maybe just me a lot of the time. I'm on at this point, but like with the live chat and stuff, and this is how the debate had shifted. Right, it was mad. Which one do you want to sign permanently?
Yeah,
CCV or Jota? I was always like, fucking them both. I was like, them both. And everyone was like, aye, but Jota's checked out already. He knows. But when you actually look back at the loan signings of the two, I think we have to be honest, in terms of strategy for the Celtic team, the Jota one was done with the courage of our convictions, right? And that was done to add an element to the Celtic side that we knew was going to take it to the next bit. Cameron Carter-Vickers we actually landed on at the last possible, injury time winner. Do you know what I mean? Because that isn't something we'd been either selling well enough, being strong enough in terms of our determination to acquire. And I actually think it was Spurs that have kind of flagged it to us at the last minute. If I remember right, that was the word round the campfire with the wee fella and all that, because they're ITK. I think, but remember he did sign at like midnight. Do you know what I mean?
He did, yeah.
And I think we landed upon the Cameron Carter-Vickers one. Yes, an amazing deal in its own right. Of course it is, because look what he does now. But I think the Jota one had been done just with a wee bit more purpose, a wee bit more definition, and we didn't land lucky on that one. Actually, I think the Jota one, we were way, way ahead of the curve, because the one thing as well about this money that I'm saying, like, look, Celtic had to agree that fee. It works two ways. If you don't think Benfica aren't raging at the point where it's got to mid-season and they're looking at what Jota's doing and going, we fucking agreed 6.8 million with them. And of course they're going to trigger it. Do you know what I mean? So you can't be in that position of strength without having those funds there, right? You just can't. It's just bullshit, right? So if anyone wants to dress that up and think that was the Champions League money for this year getting used, I'm sorry, that's not how it works, right? Yeah. And certainly Celtic, they don't speculate now, so there's no way they gambled they would win the league on Jota. Right? Let's get that clear. But we've got to be honest here. But I think that season, Spurs watched a guy excel in the Premier League in Cameron Carter-Vickers and the SPL at Celtic and did pretty well in the Europa League and thought, that's his level. We're okay with the 6 million. I genuinely think that, because he's had numerous loan spells before that. I think Jota, Benfica were probably spewing the day that those terms were finalised and that deal was done. And I just think as well, the way we went about the two signings, I do think we landed on our feet with Cameron Carter-Vickers, albeit, as I say, take nothing away from him. But I think definitely the Jota one. If there's a model to be followed, and I don't mean his looks, that is the one.
Well, I'll come to you, Liam, on this point about the Benfica thing, because we only saw just this week, at the end of the English transfer window, once again, Benfica have pulled something out of the bag. I don't know how they're doing it, but as Kimchi Strider here says in the chat, look at how Benfica skin English clubs for players like Darwin, and the Jota deal is even more mental. I realised because it was Enzo Fernandez, he went to Chelsea for 100+ million. Scored one goal at the World Cup, from what I remember. You had João Felix a few years ago, went to Atletico Madrid for stupid money. He's now on loan at Chelsea. And Darwin Núñez, Benfica have got this, I don't know how they do it, but they keep on getting crazy money for their players, but they must be absolutely kicking themselves to that one. That, Jota's slipped through the net there for 6 million, which, say, going by their standards, that's chump change that we've paid for him, isn't it?
It'd be nice if we could have got one of their, the guy that makes the transfers on loan for the window to handle Juranovic as well. They seem to know how to negotiate a fee and get stuff, And, I mean, no wonder he couldn't get into that team. Well, I don't know if he couldn't, but you can see the pedigree of the boys that he's grown up with and he's played with. And I think everybody knew that with Jota coming in. I mean, fair to say we're all quite pie-eyed knowing it we were getting for the Benfica. Harrison's, Ronaldo's his hero. You could see him want to sort of
good plug, Liam. Good plug, mate. I like that.
Paul Dyett's showing me up. I do this for a living. Paul Dyett's just rapping them out, bang, bang, bang. You know? But
with the most ironic surname ever to be trying to advertise pies for us as well, Paul Dyett. Do you know what I mean?
No. To be fat nobody end. But so when CCV came in, sorry Mark, I'm using abbreviation because I've got my teeth in. You know, there's no expectations. I thought when he first came in, he looked a bit heavy. I thought he looked bigger than what I imagine a centre back to be. He didn't look as fit and as what we were used to from Van Dijk or any of the other boys we'd had in that position before him, Iron and all that. So my expectations were quite low. What was that? Paul Pyatt. This is too good tonight. Anyway, aye, great. Wow, brilliant, Paul, brilliant. Pies, better.
Try before you pie.
Try before you pie.
So do you think CCV and maybe Jake, he'd eaten all the pies before he joined for Spurs? Did Jake look to be a bit heavier set?
Okay, I just took a bad turn on that.
But I thought. I mean, you also need to remember for whatever reason, sometimes a sexy name, and just like even just how he appears, Jota, I just thought he's going to be good. Right, the honest truth, and because it's the foreign name and the Benfica thing, and you're looking at Cameron Carter-Vickers and you're like, Spurs, but really he's not been a Spurs player. He's been a loanee at, his best ever time was at Bournemouth in the Championship, and you thought, fucking, he's had 8 clubs. He's 22, 23. Can this guy be that good? He's maybe pleasantly surprised. Well, in fact, more than pleasantly surprised us. But I do think the model for that try before you pie, as Scott's calling it, I think Jota is the benchmark for that. And poor Jens, because if that is then what Ange is expecting when he does a try before you pie, I mean, you're looking at Jota and going, that's one hell of a high bar to a set. Do you know what I mean? Because that is an unbelievable deal. We used to debate as well, remember, Phil, in the before the deal had actually been announced that we were buying them permanently, and there was a bit of speculation, will we, won't we? And the argument, the debate we used to say that makes it a no-brainer is you could buy him for 6.8 million and sell him the next day for 15.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you remember we were saying that? Like, hypothetically, when his valuation is so way below, based on that season at Celtic alone, what it actually is. I went, this is, and that's why I think that deal was done way in advance. He was told to pack his bags, go on his wee Mickey Mouse World Tour, go enjoy yourself, go have a few pints with the boys, pack your Celtic top, son, and we'll see you a week later pre-season training. Do you know what I mean? We'll build a hype job on you. And I think that deal and the CCV one were I think they were permanently agreed way earlier.
Aye. It was, and there's also as well he calls kind of saying yes, Daizan Maeda was technically a loan before you buy. That's one of those weird obligation to buy one. Same with Timothy Awata. That's weird. Yeah, I know.
You say that they're weird. Actually, I'm glad they came up because I actually think it's folk don't like this because it's the board and it's being cheap and that's not. I think it's good. See if you think it in principle, right? Try before you buy is good because if there's no obligation, then if they're rat shit, they go away. But see if you're, for example, the two Awata and Maeda, there's no doubt about it, identified by Ange, guys he wants, right? See, by having the obligation, what it does is, in theory, is it frees up the money for folk that you're not going to get that way, that you have to buy right now. You need the money up front right now, and it just displaces that to next season. When you've generated all your new season ticket money, your Champions League money or whatever it's come in, and it just chops off. So it's actually quite a smart tactic, I think, to move that money about and free up cash for the now, should you need it. So, I think it's brilliant. It's something that we probably should have done a long time ago.
Yep. To benefit having a forward-thinking
Can you
manager.
imagine having a Barcas on a try before you buy?
Oh, we could have benefited from that.
Or a Yeti on a try before you buy.
Oh.
I think AEK obligated us to buy him for the get-go. I think they were laughing. Do you know what I mean?
You're fucking tearing up the contracts.
Who was there? I bet they were like, who was their last keeper? Craig Gordon. You know what I mean? Fucking 100 years old, 40 broken legs, but you know what I mean? He's still pretty good. And who was it before that? Fraser Forster. Was there about to pay us £5 million for
Interestingly, Scott Bain's in amongst that, who had the strangest loan deal signing ever, where he was a Dundee player on loan at Hibs, turned up in his Hibs trackie on deadline night to sign for Celtic on loan for the rest of the season. Strange. So, on that note, Scott Bain gets the final word, essentially. He's the last one we talked about. We didn't even got into somebody like Moritz Bauer the night. How heartbreaking. We'll save him for another time, I'm sure.
Do you know what I loved about Moritz Bauer? Moritz Bauer always looked like a generic baddie for fucking Die Hard, didn't he? He looked at one.
Remember the trench coat thing? He turned up at one of the Celtic nights out. He had like a trench coat. And...
He looked at one of Hans Gruber's goons, like with a fucking stuff.
That's true. That's true.
Like, if he was a credit he had a Die Hard, it'd be generic bad guy 5 or something.
Jerry McGee used to get all excited every time he took a throw in because he was a long throw expert, you know. But he only ever done
expert.
Right.
If that's your key attribute, you're fucking shite.
That's up there with he's rapid.
He's a good throw expert.
But yeah, guys, that wraps up. We're just past 2 hours, 2 hours 10 minutes, so we'll wrap it up there with our loans one. But yeah, we'll now quickly do the trivia. It was quite an easy question, I felt. It's all to do with Celtic and Man City's brilliant business relationship they've got going on. Turns out there's 8 players that have moved from Man City to Celtic this century on loans or permanents. I think you'll get them pretty easily. We probably mentioned a whole load of them tonight, but yeah, guys, 8 of them.
Yep.
Arzani.
Arzani's one of them.
Arzani, I've got Denayer.
Roberts.
Yeah,
Roberts.
He get mentioned. Yeah, Roberts get mentioned, yep. He get mentioned, yep.
Denayer, Guidetti and Denayer.
Guidetti. Yep. Samaras, yeah.
Yep.
Didn't even mention
Boyata.
Boyata, of course, yep.
Frimpong.
Frimpong, yeah. Jeremy Frimpong, yeah.
And Charm.
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 Yeah, Charm. Indeed, that's your race. It was Samaras, Denayer, Guidetti, Roberts, Boyata, Charm, Arzani, Frimpong.
There's a technicality as well. Because the last team he played for was near Beaton. He played ironically in Australia for Man City. I remember watching the game on some dodgy street. Like, I was fucking bored on this day off, right? And it was like, I watched it. It was the full game, I think, was on YouTube at the time, or like extended highlights. And I just watched it just to see what he looked like as a player because we were signing him, but he'd been at City on trial. Near Beaton. So the last team he'd actually played in a fixture for, albeit a non-competitive one, was Man City near Beaton.
So he's
another City link. So that's where they've got that tipped off from. He's not good enough for us, but he'll probably do well for you.
Just think he could have been sent off in the Premier League.
Oh, he would have. Oh God, yeah.
How many?
Terrible.
He'd made Roy Keane look like a fucking angel. Do you know what I mean?
He would have. But yeah, that does wrap up our loan special. But next week, I'm going to show the viewers now what's coming up next week on Bustalgia because I've got it ready. On a similar vein, we're going to be doing another special of certain types of players. It's a little bit of a twist because it's not guys that actually played for Celtic. Because as you'll know, when you look at the thumbnails of all these shows, it says at the bottom, the Celtic years. But next week's one is going to be called the Almost Celtic years. Yeah, well, we are going to take a look at players who nearly could have been Celtic players. We're going to not just time travel, we're going to go into alternate universes and wonder what could have been with some of these ones. So that is the plan for next week. It is almost Celtic years. And yeah, we'll obviously look at how it didn't come to be and whatnot. But yeah, that is the plan for next week's Bustalgia. Yeah, we dip into that one, guys. But Russell, do you wish to tell the viewers what's coming up this weekend on the bus?
I've not got a fucking clue, mate. All I'm thinking about is that doner kebab pie, mate. It's like I know I've got another one in the fridge. and I'm like fighting all my willpower not to fire it in the oven right now. But no, we will do a Saturday session. Steve-O's joining us tomorrow again for the Saturday night session. Richie, who was brilliant, by the way, on the Sunday session that we did a couple of weeks ago, Steve-O was on that as well. He's rejoining us. And we'll get a wild card. Liam, if you're game, you're welcome. I know your hell-raising ways, mate. I know you're out and about all the time, man. So I don't want to interrupt your party lifestyle, by the way, because you're a man after my own heart with that. Do you know what I mean? I know how important it is to party. So I'm like, but if you want to come on and we'll do the same thing.
I think you need to come on, because then we can all get accused of being dope heads again.
Oh dear!
But we could do that again. If you're up for the Saturday session, you're welcome. We're then going to do.
That'll be fun.
The Sunday Blethers still goes ahead on Sunday. I don't know if David might put it. David's chirpy in the morning, man. He'll be quite happy to do a 10:30 till 11:30, or he might just do 11 straight into kickoff. Go head to head in the wars for the pre-match bulletin. We'll just do a blether, right? We'll do a blether, right? And we'll do that, and then we'll obviously have to get Big Terry on. Terry the numbers, Rob. Do you know what I mean? Because whenever Terry's on, the numbers just falling. Over 200 last night in the TNF. I'm like, it's fucking Terry. Like, the only time we see over 200 is PMP. But Terry comes on the TNF way over 200 all night last night. So his middle name is now the numbers. So Terry the numbers, Rob, he'll be joining us for PMP on Sunday. So you can get a double shift Sunday. And also, don't forget, 8 a.m. tomorrow, Judgment Day 4 will be released, because before it came on Bustalgia, that all got pre-recorded. So whilst my pie was in the oven, Phil, I was working, mate. I had the judge for company in a different wee studio on the platform. So yes, Judgment. It's just all how exciting is all this. It's great. We've got pie sport. We've got bees buzzing about everywhere. We've got shows galore. We've got characters all over the bus, and we've got the best passengers in the land. That's just what it's all about, mate. It's too easy, this game. Love it.
Yeah, it is, and it's been fun tonight. The pie puns have been phenomenal. And the final thing I'm going to check is I put a poll on the comments at the start asking, who's your favourite loan player of all time?
What is your favourite pie?
What's your favourite pie? 101 votes. The options were Robbie Keane, Craig Bellamy, Patrick Roberts, or other. In the end, the winner is Craig Bellamy with 44%. Paddy Roberts came in with 23%. Robbie Keane got 19%. And other, whoever that could be, there's many options, came in with 15%. So there you go.
But Phil, the poll was good, but Scott Howe wins the day because he's just tied in the could have been Celts, so they're almost.
Of course, yes.
They're almost Celsius. Paivan de la Pina. Oh, that is just too good.
Paivan de la Pina is definitely getting mentioned next week.
Like that, he just tied it all in perfectly. That's Lincoln.
Yep.
That's proper pattern, mate. Honestly, he's a pint whatever you've had, Scott, because that's too sharp. That is too sharp, mate.
But yeah, De La Pena will definitely feature, but I vow now to make next week a David Ginola and Paul McGrath free zone, and that's all I'm saying on that one. So yes.
You know, we actually nearly signed David Ginola. Do you know that? Like,
we're out of here. Here's Chris Sutton, a guy that did sign for us. So let's hear Chris Sutton.
I mean, you've all that stuff at the start. You know, they won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.